Good morning, everyone. A privilege to be here today to speak to you. I could go on and on about the importance of why we're gathered here because I've had to do it over and over again, today being my wife's birthday. That being said, I'm here just to give a quick safety briefing on what we need to know and what we need to do. The only fire we expect today is a fireside chat, but just in case we have an actual physical fire. So the fire exits are down that way. So back of the hall, you see a sign that says gym. The other sign goes to the stairwell and straight into the car park. We also have another exit here. On every floor, we have fire assembly points with hydrants and also fire extinguishers should there be any need. But that being said, there are ushers around. If you need anything, please ask the people in the shirts that say Future of Power. If there are any real problems, please ask me. But we look forward to having a fantastic event, safe, and making sure everyone lives here as they came and can go back to their families. Thank you so much for coming out today. God bless you.
Many thanks for that, Mr. Brian. We surely are in good hands, and we will hopefully have no need to call him. Let's move on with a goodwill message that I would like to invite Mr. Annie Ojuya, who is the chairman at Millwater, to please join us for that. Can we please give him a warm round of applause?
Good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and fellow stakeholders, Africa energy sector. I'm honored to be part of this gathering of innovators and leaders shaping the future of power in Africa. As we converge here today, I want to express my gratitude to the convener, Engineer Jude Woko Chinye, and the entire team for organizing this pivotal conference. The term of the conference, The Future of Power Africa, resonates deeply with me. As we navigate the complexities of our continent's energy landscape, it's clear that sustainable energy solutions are the key to unlocking Africa's full potential. As we explore the frontiers of innovation and industry advancement, I urge us to remember that our quest for sustainable energy is not just about technological advancement, but also about people. It's about empowering communities, promoting energy access, and creating opportunities for economic growth. I commend the organizers for curating a rich program that promotes to educate, inspire, and challenge us. I look forward to engaging with fellow speakers, panelists, attendees, as we share success stories to discuss challenges and co-create solutions. As we embark on this journey today, together, I offer my best wishes for a productive and enriching conference. May our conversations, presentations, networking opportunities ignite new ideas, foster collaboration, and propel us towards a brighter energy future for Africa. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you so much for that goodwill message. That was Mr. Annie Ojuya, who is the chairman of Millwater. We're going to proceed with the order of the day so that we do not waste any more time, and I would like to invite, but before I do that, actually, one of the reasons we're in this room today is to talk about one of our very cogent topics, which is regulatory shifts in Nigeria's power sector. There could still be a question mark around that sometimes for people who don't really understand in what ways does this actually affect the order of things, especially at the layman level. So I would expect or believe that most of us here are quite high level in terms of this conversation, but how does this trickle down, understanding wise, to the guy who just wants to see his power every other time, or, pay for it and get it? We're going to begin this conversation because we have an individual who is going to, shed some more light on this and, give us a lot more color on this particular topic. And we're going to begin with the regulatory remarks with Mrs. Kofo Olokun Olawi, who is the Executive Commissioner for Legal Advisory, Registration and Licensing. If she could please join us on the stage. Many thanks. Good morning. Thank you so much, Ms. Kofo. Thank you
so much. Good morning, everyone, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure to be in your midst today to be talking about the evolution of power sector in Nigeria, particularly Lagos State. It was such an honor to actually receive that call from the convener, Engineer Nwoko, to actually be talking here today. According to him, he said he would like for me to come talk about what's going on in the sector today. What are the plans? What are the opportunities? What does the law even say, specific to Lagos? Because, I can only actually talk about Lagos State right now. And he said he would really like it that the members of the public and distinguished members really understand what exactly is the government doing? What exactly is the law about? What are the opportunities for people? What are the benefits and all of that? So I said, okay, hopefully I'm able to do justice to that, and I just hope everyone enjoys the session. So I sent in slides earlier because I just didn't want to be talking. I would have loved you to, visualize some of these things that I will be saying, but pending the time they put things together, I would just start. So I had an outline created, and the intention is just probably to give, general introduction, and then also see how we've actually the reason why we came about the journey where we are today, what were the challenges that actually prompted the journey so far, and then also the key institutions established by the Lagos State Electricity Law of 2024, and what are the major key provisions, the summary, so that at least when we step out of here today, we are able to say one or two things about what the law is about, or when people are discussing the law around us, we are able to say one or two things or contribute to, very stimulating discussions with colleagues. And then, so after the summary of the law, we're going to be talking about what are the benefits that are, that we see already and that we are hoping to, unlock from this law. And what are the business opportunities that people should start looking into? Because, looking at these faces, I see faces of people who really want to do business, who want to, get into that space, make money. Mr. Anire that was here earlier is a business-minded person that I actually admire. So I know that people really want to, hear about what opportunities we have and how they can actually key into that Lagos State electricity market we have all been hearing about since December last year. And then also, as regulators, or as the regulator in Lagos, or one of the commissioners of the regulator in Lagos State, how are we going to be creating an enabling environment for people who intend to come in? And then we're going to be concluding the session. So, by way of introduction, everybody knows that when we talk about Lagos State, it's a commercial hub. Where you talk about, with a population of about maybe 12.7 million, and commercial hub of Nigeria. We currently have thank you so much. So we currently have today, power between 1,000 and 1,500 megawatts coming into Lagos through our two major distribution companies, Eco Electricity and Ikeja Electric. And when in actual fact, with the industrial, commercial, and residential nature that we have in Lagos, we really need up to about 12,000 megawatts to be able to conveniently actually power, most of the things that we have in Lagos today. And we are talking about between 1,000 and 1,500. That's a far cry. That's about maybe 11% or thereabouts that we are talking about here. So apart from the major IPPs that we really have, the Leviathans and all, we have the major grid provider, the plant Egbin PLC, that is thermal power station that is actually situated in Korodu. this is just to give us like an insight, just to understand what the space is like and what are the power needs here. And because of the challenges that why we having 1,000, 1,500, is because of different challenges that we have today in the sector. And when you ask different people, they talk about different challenges. If I'm talking from the consumer as perspective, I will have my own challenges that I'm going to talk to you about. If you ask the utility companies, they have their own challenges. If you have ask the regulator will give you different perspective as to the challenges that they are also experiencing in the sector. So this is just to, I'm already on slide 3 actually. So this is just to, next slide please, just so they can actually visualize, because I don't think I want to dwell into the challenges. We all know what the challenges are. So from the consumer perspective, if you ask them today, they will say, some consumers will tell you, I don't have access to power at all. If you ask the people around that Badagry, some Utumara, very urban, peri-urban areas, they'll tell you, I don't have access to power at all. Some who have access will tell you, I don't have reliability. Once they bring you 1 hour, that's the end of it. And then some will tell you, oh, it's estimated billing. Previous slide, please. Some will tell you it's estimated billing. Some will tell you, oh, is the fact that I don't even know how much I'm supposed to be charged. There's no transparency. I don't have any, I don't know how they're charging me. They just come, they just bring the bill and that's it. Some people will say it's meters I want. Those are the kinds of challenges that you hear the consumers actually talk about. And then so many others that I've actually listed on here. And then if you look at from the utility point of view, utility will tell you that the first thing they'll tell you is high ATC and C. And why is that? Because it's ATC and C that you use to determine the health of a distribution company. What do I mean by ATC and C? I mean the aggregate, technical, commercial, and collection losses. If your ATC and C is high as a distribution company, forget it, there's no way you can actually break even. You can't even cover your costs. And what does it mean? Technical losses, maybe at the end of the day, by the time you receive your power from the TCN substation with the line, by the time your 33 kV picks it up, you are picking up about maybe 1,000 megawatts, for instance, or 500 megawatts. Before it even gets to the consumer, maybe at the end of the day, you are able to account for maybe 700 megawatts. What happens to the 300? It's because of the dilapidated infrastructure. It's because of, lack of you not being able to rehabilitate what you already have. So you are having losses. And at the end of the day, you're going to be billed for it as a distribution company. And then again, the commercial losses are the fact that, okay, I can account that, okay, I received 700, but I'm not able to bill 700. I can't even account for it. I'm only able to bill 500 megawatts. So what happens to the 200 megawatts? Definitely some people are stealing power somewhere. So it's issues like maybe energy theft, lack of meters, or even if you have meter deployed in certain areas, you don't have the technology to be able to monitor when people tamper with your meters and all of that. That's commercial loss. And the collection. By the time you even build the 500 megawatts, you are not able to even collect the 500 megawatts. You are able to maybe collect 200. What happens to the 300? People don't want to pay and all of those things. So the first thing the utility company will tell you is there's high ATC and C loss, because it affects their business and it affects their revenue. And then you have other things like maybe vandalism, obstruction of duty, inefficient electricity used by consumers, financial challenges. Because of the things going on, people don't want to come in to invest in the sector. Because of the past, because of history and all of that, everybody wants to be sure that when I put in my money in here, I want to be able to recoup it. I want returns on investment. So people are really not looking into the ways of the utility companies for now. Is when they're beginning to see this evolution that everybody's thinking, okay, let me wait, let me see what's going on and all of that, and let me see if I can. And from the regulator's perspective, they will tell you grid resilience is a challenge. Today is grid collapse. Tomorrow it is another grid collapse. It gives them headache because at the end of the day, they want to be able to say, oh, we've seen in the news, I think twice this year, TCN has celebrated peak of about 5,000, over 5,000 or thereabouts, and almost immediately it's gone. And then they celebrate again, and almost immediately it is gone. But we want resilience in a situation where there's weather, and all of these things contribute to, things that are beyond human nature contribute to these things. But how resilient is your grid in such a way that it's able to withstand all these disruptions and is able to still run? So that's the first thing the regulator will tell you. Regulator will tell you compliance is my issue. I issue out standards, I issue out rules, regulations. Not everybody complies with it. Not all the utilities companies comply with it. And that's because maybe sometimes the regulation may be a bit off. Or maybe difficult. For instance, the capping of estimated bills. Discuss complaining that, by the time they do the capping, it cost them billions of naira in a month, you know. So, and then you have things like, okay, trying to, you know, be aware of the environment, you know, renewable energy, sourced energy, and all of those things. So this is just to let you know some of the challenges that have actually contributed to the reason why we are still struggling with electricity today. Now, what has been the journey so far? Next slide, please. So I think all of this thing actually just contributed to the fact that, to the reason why specific people actually approached and said, look, let's amend the constitution. You know, the former constitution actually gives the state the right to actually legislate because it is on concurrently. So what does that mean? The federal can make laws regarding power and the state can. But when the federal does it, it covers the field, you know, and the state has to do to the extent that is consistent with what the federal has actually given out. However, the last provision of the constitution actually exempts power or areas that have already been covered by the grid. Meaning, if it is grid related, then it is actually the federal, which is NEC, that would legislate and, you know. So, but now they've removed that and they've said, okay, you know what, states, they've decentralized more or less. So states can actually set up their electricity markets, set up their own laws, and then they will transition from national to state. So that actually happened in March 2023, and then from there was an enactment of the Electricity Act. And the Electricity Act more or less also focuses on federal. And then for also the states that decide not to set up the electricity market, it's not compulsory. It's if you wish to do that as a state. And then also now makes provision for the transition process in the event that the state wakes up tomorrow and says, I want to set up my electricity market and set up my own law. So that's why we put the Electricity Act there. And then the next one is the establishment of the Lagos State Electricity Law of 2024, which was signed into law last year, December. And then the formation of the Lagos State Electricity Regulatory Commission, LASEC, or the commission. I'll be using more of the commission here. So when I say the commission, please, I'm not referring to NERC, I'm referring to LASEC, which is the regulator for the states. Now, it would be nice to just point out the key institutions that were established by the law. So the first one, like I said, is the LASEC. The LASEC is going to be taking the functions of what NEC, does at the federal level. So they're going to be the primary regulator. They're going to monitor the market, issue regulations, rules, you know, and all of those things, orders, directives, make sure the Lagos electricity market actually runs very, very well. They will also be working together with other agencies to see how they can actually achieve the goals of the state in ensuring that there's electricity for all citizens of Lagos State. And I just pulled out some of the functions in the law, but I just basically summarized it for you right now. And then you have the Lagos State Electrification Agency. So this is not a new agency. There used to be a body called Lagos State Electricity Board. So basically what they did is to convert it to an agency and then say that, okay, they have to, you know, reconstitute, and then they will control and manage electricity installations, and also see to how those kind of projects that the ministry actually wants to churn out, how they are implemented and how they are done or achieved. And then the functions are also spelled out. And then you have the Lagos Independent System Operator. So now this Lagos ISO is going to be doing what the federal ISO also does, dispatch, allocation, and all of that. But the law is very, very mindful of the fact that it has to be independent. It's not supposed to be for profit making. You know, when you have a body that does something as sensitive as that, market settlement, power allocation, dispatch, and all of that, you want that objectivity and that independence. So for this purpose, there are going to be specific people who are going to be, you know, part of the business, the stakeholders, so that everybody is part of it and everybody understands what's going on and are part of the decision that will be made. So some of the functions have also been highlighted: ensuring and maintaining reliability of supply in Lagos State, managing the connection of state grid with the national grid also, because there will definitely still be a lot of interface with the national grid. Now, then the last body that we really need to be aware of is the Power Enforcement Unit. So one of the issues that we've noticed in the sector is people will tell you, oh, there's energy theft, people are stealing power, we need laws. You don't need laws. Even the laws you have today, they are very sufficient to be able to charge anybody or to book anybody today. But the problem is enforcement, you know. Having worked with the utility company, legal department, you see a whole lot. Especially at the beginning, it was really, really, really demanding because you go to court and then you see a judge and then they say, oh, okay, oh, meter, I don't have meter in my house, so, obviously you already know that, this one, I have to struggle, I have to. But what am I driving at? It was really a struggle to be able to enforce certain things sometimes. It was also as a result of that collaboration, lack of collaboration, and lack of awareness of what is going on in the sector. And that's why we started at that point carrying people along the enforcement agencies, letting them understand the sector, letting them understand what's going on. And then we also realized that there's need for skilled people who are able to understand and also implement and enforce some of these things. But the law actually makes provision for the power enforcement unit that will be stationed in the agency and would actually, there's a constitution which would include people from the Ministry of Justice, people from the ministry, and there would also be an enforcement agent seated right in that office, and they will have the power to arrest, inspect, enter premises, and do whatever it is that is necessary for them to be able to enforce some of these penalties and, sanctions that are imposed. Now, having said all of those four major institutions that have been established by the law, I'll move on to quickly summarize the law generally so that we are able to talk when people are talking about the law, what does the law say and all of that. So the law is actually divided into 19 parts, really. So, and the first part actually focuses on the market, the electricity market. It talks about the electricity market, develops it, talks about the ministry's function when you're talking about that. And it also goes ahead with parts 2 and 3. It establishes LASEC. So basically what it says is, okay, how many commissioners are there supposed to be? 5 commissioners, 3 executives and 2 non-execs. How are they appointed? What happens when there's a vacancy? The usual that you have in the law. So that because it's an independent regulatory agency, it has to be well spelled out. All of those provisions, all of their governance have to be spelled out. They're also allowed to also come up with a policy that will also guide their governance structure and the framework. And then you have Part 4, which basically develops and reviews the Lagos Integrated Electricity and Strategic Implementation Plan. And this plan is supposed to guide the overall development of the Lagos electricity market. And then you have Part 5 that talks about licensing and undertaking regulated activities. Anybody who wants to undertake any regulated activity in Lagos must obtain license or permit from the commission. So it talks about the different types of activities. The next part now breaks them down. Generation, if you want to have a plant, what qualifies you to go and get permits, okay, above 1 megawatt. If you're also going to be doing captive, but the moment you want to do commercial, you approach the commission, let them look into it, let them see, and then let them give you the permits required. And then transmission, obviously there has to be transmission licenses that can be given out by the commission, provided that proper applications are made, proper conditions are met, and then the terms and conditions will be given by the commission, and they have to be complied with by the relevant licensee. Trading is another aspect of it, distribution and supply. And the grant of license and activities, how you go about it and everything is actually spelled out. Now, the reason why I actually wanted us to note this is, it's tiny, my apologies. So the reason why one thing that I want us to take note of here is the law, just like the Electricity Act, also envisages a particular period where they're going to be disaggregating distribution from supply. Now, what do I mean? Today, the DISCO actually does distribution and does supply, does everything. They are the ones that interface with NBET, or if they want to do bilateral, they interface with the GENCO, or if they have a trading company, they will interface, buy power, distribute it, interface with the consumers, do the metering, do every other thing. But now, what it will be now is distribution is just going to be focused on construction, operation, and maintenance of lines. Every other thing around it will be under supply entity and supply license. So even the Electricity Act envisages at a point where the NEC will also say, let's disaggregate. And you have some benefits in that also, which is, specialization and all of that, fast fault clearing and all of, because by the time the distribution company knows that all it focuses on is just construction, maintenance, and operation, they will be able to, improve reliability and that grid resilience. And then moving on, you have part 10 that talks about investigation and enforcement, because the law actually spells out particular offenses, and it was very, very detailed. Very detailed to the extent that he went into the different types of electricity offenses you can have. It's not just meter bypass that is an offense. That a disco employee wants to come in to disconnect for non-payment, you shouldn't obstruct him in his line of duty. If he's doing it, the way he should do it with authority and all. You shouldn't. Vandalism and all of those things, harassment, assault, everything was actually taken care of with proper penalties. And he went further to actually distinguish between when they're penalizing the entity, an entity, so it could be a company, or when they're penalizing an individual who has actually carried out that offense. And then you have things like establishment of the ISO, that's the ISO I mentioned before, Independent System Operator. And then tariff regulation, went into the methodology, how LASEC should ensure that whatever tariff you're designing is such a way that it actually encourages investment. It's in a way that you are actually including the various costs and you're having a particular margin and all of that. So there's that tariff regulation provision. There's market regulations, codes, and standards that have been ordered that LASEC must issue and empowers LASEC to issue for safety and, safety of the utility company employees, utility company itself and properties and assets, and also the members of the public and their assets too. And then renewable energy is also one area that the law actually made adequate provision for. Energy efficiency and DSM. What do I mean by DSM? DSM is demand side management, the ability for the consumers to be able to effectively manage their consumption, so that at the end of the day, you don't need to start thinking about how to continue to improve or increase electricity, because sometimes some of these things that we actually do, we don't even need some of the things that we do sometimes. You leave your house, the power is on, the light is on, the AC, especially when you're on estimated bill. I know most of us do that. But if you have meter, that's when you start saying things like, did you turn on the lights? Go and turn off your lights, that kind of thing. But it's a way of encouraging that management of electricity so that we know exactly what we want. We are able to now work within the needs and all. Then there's off-grid electrification. Off-grid matters, Lagos State Electrification Agency, the structure, the funds, everything was actually provided for in this part in the law. Then the offenses and penalties, like I said. And then another thing that the law actually made provision for is Host Community Development Fund. So anywhere a GENCO, a generation company, is operating, there is expected to be 2% of the expenditure, at least, to go into that fund to help that community develop. Because we all know how it is with power generation, the emissions and sometimes. And again, it's also a way of the community feeling like, yes, we are benefiting from this company being in here. So then there is transition of the Lagos State electricity market, which talks about how you transition from national to the state. And then the last part is the general provisions. It repealed the last law that was signed under the leadership of Governor Ambode, which was in 2018. That was the Lagos Electricity Power Sector Reforms Law. So it repealed that, and this is the law that we have now existing. Now, what are the benefits? So if you look at the benefits, the first thing, next slide, please. So the first benefit, there's focus on unreserved and underserved, underserved and unserved areas. And these are areas that, so let's face it, the utility companies are also here for business, right? Because in 2013, when the businesses were privatized, it may not be known to, everybody, but it's public knowledge. It was a huge amount of money that they used to buy or purchase the 60% shares that they have. And so there's actually a difficult task to be able to balance the interest of, I must make power available, and I must also be able to cover my cost to a reasonable extent. So whatever it is, there has to be that decision that needs to be made strategically to be able to know, okay, these are the areas I can go into now, especially with the limited funds that they have. So you find that there are some areas that are still lacking in power. because by the time you consider the infrastructure you even need to put in there, and you consider the collections you'll be getting from there, it may not be pleasing sometimes or, interesting. So what you find them do is, okay, let me just focus on this or let me do this. So we find some areas that really require that attention and that those strategies or measures that they need to put in place fast to be able to give them access or better reliability. So what the law actually does is actually focuses on some of these things, encourages to say things in, increasing reliability and also encouraging people to come in and, see what they can do. The ministry to also collate and see what are the underserved areas, what are the unserved areas, or where are the unserved areas. What can we do? How do we go about it? And then the second one is enhancement of financial viability of licensees. So if you look at the law actually allows the transmission company to do other businesses, provided that part of the revenue of all the other businesses will be used, that they derive from it, will be used in reducing the cost of the wheeling charge that they have. What does that mean? It tells on the tariff. So it reduces the tariff that you'll be paying as consumer. So at the end of the day, you see that it actually encourages, that financial viability. The licensees are able to, see, but with the approval of the commission, obviously. And then you have consumer experience and protection. The law actually hammers on various ways to ensure that the consumer is happy, the consumer is excited, and he talks about collaborating with certain agencies to create code standards that would help the consumers in how the utility companies handle their complaints and all of those things. And also how you protect them in terms of safety, security, and all of that. So you don't leave wires dangling, there's a snap, and there are things you need to do immediately. So the commission is charged with that responsibility of issuing safety codes and safety standards. That's where the HSE also comes in from. And then enhanced bankability and improved liquidity. How? You'll see that all of the things that contribute to high ATC and C have more or less been provided for in the law. When you talk about technical losses, there's more encouragement in investment, people coming in to see how they can help the utility company put in more money and all of those things. And then commercial losses, you see things on provision of metering, 100% metering. By the time you are connecting, from the commencement of the law actually says that you must connect only with a meter, not without a meter. So it's going to be an offense now for you to connect without a meter. So all of these things are supposed to bridge that gap, even to help the utility companies to be able to reduce their commercial losses. It also helps in the technology aspect of it, to bring in people to see how they can invest in technology to stop energy theft and also improve, operations and all of that. And then the collection losses, also all the penalties, all the offenses listed, they have ways of curbing all of these things that contribute to ATC and C loss. And then investments and guarantee on investments. The law actually helps in ensuring that at least when you want to come in and invest, you're guaranteed on your returns. How did it do that? With a tariff methodology, with a very good tariff design, created and also issued by the commission. You are supposed to also ensure that fairness, that competition, allow efficient licensee to recover full and reasonable costs, and also get some margin on it. And then you have provisions again like, the commission shall specify electricity code, 1, to provide recovery of electricity charges, 2, also for disconnection of supply. So the code is supposed to encompass all of this, like incorporate all of these things. So when you even go and disconnect supply for non-payment, there should be some charge that will be there. When you won't go and restore supply, when there's distress or damage to your plant or to any of your infrastructure or to meter, also entry and discouraging and removing or replacing or altering the meters or any infrastructure that you have as utility company. So all of these things, looking at it, it attracts investors. People want to come in and say, okay, I think it's beginning to settle now. There's a bit of certainty around and all of that. And then also, there's stability in financial and governance structure of licensees now. And what do I mean by that? It's important to note that the commission is actually empowered to intervene when they see that there's some management crisis or when there's financial crisis, so that the distribution company or the utility company continues to run. And because of the issues going on internally, it doesn't affect the operations. So the commission has the power to intervene and get into that space once that happens. So that creates some stability in the financial and governance structure of the licensees. And then you have acceleration of meter deployments and, of course, reduction in all this estimated billings and all of that, which would actually make customers happy. The 100% metering and bridging and all of that should be able to encourage people. And then the host community benefits, like I mentioned earlier. So once you have a plant in my area, I should be happy that I'll start seeing some developments in my environment with that money that you're setting aside in that fund for me. Now, cleaner energy, promotion of renewable energy. Of course, I mentioned that the renewable energy is now more, how do I put it, encouraged. And you have very different strategies, incentives, and all of that to encourage and to bring that in. Next slide, please. So what are the opportunities? I know that's what everybody has been waiting for. So the first one is you have different, so aside the regular, I want to come in as a Genco, I want to come in as a Disco, I want to have transmission license, I want to have trading license and all of that. You are also looking at different other opportunities that you can get. Off-grid opportunities. So those areas that you do not have that supply, you can actually get into the space. And there are different ways or different ways to do that. You can bring in your solar-powered or wind-powered, and people are talking about biomass now. You're seeing things about waste to power. I mean, if you pass through Ojota, you will see like, I don't know how many plots or acres that land is. It's just waste. I think there's one also on Lagos Island, somewhere here too. Those kind of things are actually renewable sources that you can use to power and power different communities for them to be able to, enjoy those things. So these are areas you can start looking into to say, okay, who do I partner with? What are the people that I can talk to? Do I want to go to China and bring in technology or plants that can actually convert waste to power? Those are the business opportunities that you can bring up from all those things. There's solar. I know people are doing solar. People are more used to solar and all that. You can even also have the micro hydros. Lagos is full of water. If there's anything you can think about, there are barges. You can bring in a barge of plants of maybe 20 megawatts, 30 megawatts, put it on water, connect it directly to talk to the Disco, connect it directly to their 33 kV, sell power to them. Let's start thinking outside the box to see what are the opportunities that we can tap into. So apart from that, you are also looking at energy storage and backup. What are the things I can bring in to also encourage and improve reliability in these areas? So people will bring in batteries and storage technology to say, okay, I'll be able to do this, and then by the time power goes off, this actually powers it and kicks off, And then there's also the technology and innovation opportunities that you have. We need technology to be able to make your grid very resilient. You need technology. So, like I explained, being resilient is you being able to withstand any disruption. Whether there's bad weather or so it's not, by the time there's raining now, I'm sure everybody's saying, I'm sure there's going to be power out and all of that. So, but basically, there are different technologies you can bring in to make your grid smart. You can look into that storage, like I said. There's SCADA, there's tracker. You can also encourage people in their houses to have those trackers that track their consumption, and they will tell them what they need to put out, what they don't need, which of the appliances is actually consuming more. So it helps that demand size management. And then you can also be involved in, the smart metering and all of that, so that it tells you in real time what you're doing. We also see that there are new technology that they're thinking through. In America, for instance, there's something that they've called the Harmony SPS. And according to them, it says that it's an advanced automated grid protection system. So these are the things that we expect that you can do and you can tap into and bring in. And of course, it will be a welcome idea and it will be a business opportunity. There are energy services opportunities, consulting, you can carry out technical audits and all of those, And these are the areas that are going to be hot right now because it's a new market. Not totally new, but because it's Lagos State market that is being established, Discos will probably want to know, okay, how do I do, or what are the assets that I have within this geographical area and all of those things. You can tap into that, finance, audit, legal, and all of that. Then, of course, the metering and infrastructure services. You can supply meters, whether the feeder meter, statistical meter for your transformer or retail, all of those things, transformers and all of that. And, of course, investments. you can actually just invest. I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to have a headache. I just want to Eco Disco, Ikeja Electric, what do you need? Oh, I need to rehabilitate this line that goes to Banana Island. Okay, how much do you need? Okay, what's my returns? You know, you can actually have that business conversation and just do it. So after these opportunities, this is the last slide. After these opportunities, you really need an enabling environment because you cannot be able to achieve all benefits from all of these things if you don't have an environment that is enabling in terms of the regulatory aspect of it. And how do we, so definitely as LASEC, our intention is definitely to create an enabling environment. We are aware and we're going to be transparent and objective. We're going to be drawing that balance because we also are aware of the fact that the companies and the utility companies are there for business. And also we have consumers that also need to be protected and have rights and expectations. So how do we intend to create an enabling environment? By creating sustainable regulatory framework and environment, making sure we have transparent rules, regulations, the licensing regime and framework is very transparent, is very known, is seen by everyone. And then also safety, security, and quality standards. I don't need to dwell too much on that. We're going to be issuing codes and standards to ensure that everybody is safe, properties are safe, not just the consumers, but also the utility companies and their workers, because it's very important. Fostering sustainability, innovation, and research. Research and development is very important, especially in an environment where you are just developing. Even developed climes, they still put in a whole lot of money into research and development. So the Commission is going to be enabling the environment by making sure that there are rules, regulations that are going to be encouraging research and development, the incentives and all of those things. And the market efficiency and transparency, we're going to make sure that there's a level playing field for people who want to play in the space. Like I said, there's going to be a very good balance, and I mean, in the interest of people because they are into business and also the consumers who are also expectant. Encouraging grid reliability, resilience, and efficiency. I've already mentioned resilience and all of that. We're going to be making out or bringing out different rules, regulations that would ensure that we are encouraging the bringing in of technology that would give that grid resilience, that would improve efficiency and all of those. Consumer protection, stakeholder management, and collaboration. We're going to be issuing consumer standards for complaints, resolution, and all of those things. And then another thing we will be doing is we're going to be engaging stakeholders really well. We're going to be bringing them into some of the things that we're going to be doing so that they are also part of, you know, knowing what's going on. That transparency is really, really important. And we're going to be collaborating with relevant agencies to see how we can actually create this enabling law as far as we can as regulators. And then encouraging, and then the last one is encouraging investment and bankability. Obviously, the tariff methodology is going to be well reasoned out by God's grace. And then we are also going to be ensuring returns on fair investment or fair returns on investments and all of those things. And then the last one, which is very critical, which people might be overlooking, which we as regulators, we've actually seen to be very, very important, is data management. If you ask today, you come, the data that you will give is the data I will give, is the data I will give, because we don't have that hub. We don't have that hub that we have actually confirmed the data that we need. And data really drives a whole lot of things. It drives investments, it drives decision-making, it drives operations, it drives improvement, it drives profitability, it drives different things that you can actually use to succeed as a company. So that data management, we are also going to be focusing on it, ensuring that we create that hub where you are able to access data to be able to make informed decisions, not just as utility companies or as investors, but also as consumers, for you to be able to know, oh, what's going on around me? What do I need to do? What do I need to not to do for me to be able to enjoy certain things? And so in conclusion, I just want to say that the establishment of the law and also LASEC, they're very, very great steps in achieving the major initiatives of the state government, and which is electricity for all. And you find that that's exactly what has been portrayed continuously by, under the leadership of Governor Sanwo-Olu and also the Commissioner, Commissioner Biodun Ogunleye. They really want to push electricity for all. As regulators, we're going to be putting things in place to ensure that there's electricity for everybody, and everybody enjoys that, not just in a way that they can't really control, but in an affordable, transparent, and fair way. And we also look forward to, cooperation and support of different stakeholders to be able to indeed get us to that vision 2030 for Lagos. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Can we please give her another round of applause? I mean, that was a very robust and insightful presentation, lots of detail there. When we look at the decentralization of Nigeria's electricity market structure, what really does that mean? So we've got quite a number of answers there. But of course, the questions never really end because it's a little more intricate than that. Some of the very key pertinent points that were shared, she spoke a lot about resilience, regulation, consumer perspective, very important, market trends, infrastructure, that keyword, we cannot separate it when we're talking about power, and sustainability. These are all very key points, and some might call them buzzwords. And they might be buzzwords because it's not very explanatory in terms of getting into the real core of it. I'm glad that you also spoke, Mrs. Kofor, about enabling environments and in relation to a framework. So we've seen regulatory shifts, but do we have the environment to accelerate and allow for this to work properly? And of course, we look at the key opportunities. But talking about key opportunities, I have to apologize because you're hardly going to get any breathing space. I'm going to have to invite you back to the stage because we're moving next to navigating regulatory shifts. So how navigable are these shifts? We've spoken about opportunities and an enabling environment, but really are those another set of buzzwords? How navigable are they in relation to this environment? So if we could please give her another round of applause. We want to welcome her back to the stage, Mrs. Kofor Olakun Olawoyin, who is the Executive Commissioner for Legal Advisory, Registration and Licensing. If you could please come up here. So we're moving right into our fireside chat. I will also be inviting to the stage our moderator for this session, Oluwaseun P. Oluwaseun is a well-rounded media creative, a radio and television host. I'm sure quite a number of you here know him quite well. He's also a conference facilitator, amongst so many other titles. If we could please give Oluwaseun a very warm round of applause. He is going to be starting this conversation. If we please have Engineer Jide Onakoya in the room yet, I don't know if he's arrived. If he has, we would love to have him join this fireside chat. But if he hasn't, we're going to proceed. And once he arrives, he will join the stage. So please, we will be beginning this conversation. Oluwaseun, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Abby. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, I was waiting for the feedback just so that, I can know that we're together. We're going to make this session as interactive as possible. You're very welcome, ma'am. It's an honor to have you, Mrs. Kofor Olakun Olawoyin. Let's put our hands together for her one more time.
The pleasure is mine.
At the start of your talk, you said that in the room, there are people who are ready for business. You could see it on their faces. And I think that you're able to recognize that because even though you're on the side of the regulator, you've also been on that side. So I was just looking at your profile. Over a decade of experience in power and corporate law. She has worked at Ecodisco, at Transcore. At some point, you were at Banwani Godalo and Paul Osoro and Co. So you have a variety of perspectives and you know what some of the challenges and issues and questions are. I have a lot of very, very difficult questions for you, but you've already addressed some of them in your opening remark. So I will just go to the easy ones. Do you like the sound of that?
It's fine. Just go ahead and ask.
All right. I know that at some point we are going to do success stories and talk about some of the companies that are doing good work and that you've engaged with or that you've seen that have engaged with LASEC, just to encourage some of our prospective investors here. But I think a place to start with this conversation, the electricity law was the game changer of 2023. You've given us a very good snapshot of the Lagos State law from 2024. But it's still very early days. It's safe to say that the frameworks are still being developed, right? What would you say, and I know you said at the end of the talk that electricity for all is the goal. I like that our chairman, Millwater, also reminded us that we must put people in view. In all our talk, it's about electricity for people. It's about the industries, it's about the businesses and the economy that needs the power. All right, so with all of this in mind, for Lagos State right now, what is the goal? Is it to perfect this framework and attract investment, or is it IGR?
Okay,
I told you I'll start with easy questions.
Yeah, very easy. So simple. All right. So thank you. I totally do not think it's about IGR. Yes, every state will be interested in, improving their internally generated revenues and all of that, but it's beyond that for the state, and which is actually very, very evident. I'm not holding brief for, the ministry, because I mean, the commissioner is vast and competent to be able to, do that himself. But from definitely looking at the laws that I just went through right now, you'll see that if you look at it, is actually well and very, very well thought through law. And why do I say that? You also hear people say things like, oh, this is actually provided for in your law. Let me see your law. Let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can adopt, for the other states and all of that. And that's because when this law was being drafted, it was really, really thought through, having different sections of the chain in the power sector in mind. Right, from gas, you're talking about sources, feedstock generally. We're not even just looking at gas, you're also looking at renewable source, like I said, through to generation, to trading, to transmission, to distribution, even to the retail angle, and then the consumer. You have everything catered to, like everything talked through for you to be able to protect that. So if you look at it and you're looking at the focus, like I said, also on unserved, underserved areas, trying to make sure that there's accessibility, people are, brought into those areas where they do not have, power and all of those. You see that looking at the law from the part 1 to 19, like I said, you see there's really nothing like the aim is, I want to, improve my IGR or all that. It is basically to improve power in Lagos. Make Lagos State that destination for foreign investment, for competitiveness, and for sustainability development, like the state actually wants it to. And if you also look at the LASEC and the different people that were actually engaged as the commissioners, you'll see that it was fairly done, and it was also well thought through. The person in charge of engineering and standard is someone who has actually been there from beginning to end in generation, in plants. Is someone who knows the standards, the codes, and is capable. If you look at the CEO, if you look at the person in charge of legal, if you look at, you'll see it, even the non-executives, you're seeing very, very objective people who have, integrity, and their focus and their aim is to improve electricity. So you mentioned something about, okay, the framework is still new, is still, what are you trying to do? Those are the things that we're actually doing at this transition stage, trying to look into what are the things we really want to do. We are all business-minded people, at the same time regulators, because there's really no way you can always just churn out regulations and all of that without being practical. It will just be theory. People will just be looking at you and be saying, okay, are you making the laws for yourself? But you have to be practical. That's why you have to be business-minded also, in a way that also you're attracting people from different countries to want to come into your country, want to come into your state, to also invest and also be part of that development in your area. So it's definitely not what you say. Okay. I say it's beyond that, and it's the achievement of electricity for all.
Okay, we'll take your word. We'll take your word for it. Please write your questions, especially if you, because as you said, it's a transition period. Yeah. And I think part of what can enable that transition is this sort of engagement with, the private sector, with experts and stakeholders to understand what their thoughts are and concerns are. Right. One of the concerns is overregulation. In your presentation, you talked about 4 different units. So there's the Lagos State Electricity Regulation Regulatory Commission, there's the Lagos State Electrification Agency, there's the Independent System Operator, and the Power Enforcement Unit. How would you address the concern that some investors or players might have about overregulation?
Okay, so if you look at these four institutions, if I were to be an investor, I will be excited and I will be more eager to come into the space. Why do I say that? As LASEC, you are a regulator. So what do? It's regulate, monitor, and enforce. You're not involved in the business. Now, if you look at the law and you look at the act, you look at, you have the Ministry of Power in the act, and then you have the Ministry of Energy also in the law in Lagos, who would tell you that the law would tell you that the ministry has the responsibility to issue policies that would improve power, improve supply. So these are the people that would actually bring out those policies that the regulators will look at and say, okay, what are the aims? What do you want to achieve? Let me make regulations, or let me regulate in a way that I'll be able to achieve this. So we're not involved in the business angle, and that's where the Lagos State Electrification Agency comes in. They assist the ministry in ensuring that business angle, or looking at infrastructure, or looking at, those are beyond the powers of LASEC. They are not for the LASEC. LASEC is purely regulatory, purely monitoring and enforcement. And then if you now look at the third one, which is the ISO, very, very important. Very important, because the power that comes in has to be allocated and dispatched by an entity. It is done in a way that it is going to be independent, with all the relevant stakeholders being part of it, so that nobody is saying, oh, because, okay, for instance, TCN today, well, there's now an ISO, but TCN used to be of three departments: TSP, the system operation, and the market operation. And then if you look at the TSP, the transmission service provider, all they do is they manage and maintain the lines for TCN. While the system operation, or the system operator in the system operations, actually does the dispatch, allocation, and all of those things. And then also looks into the stability of the grid and all of those things. And then you have the market operator, who now settles the market and ensures that settlements and everything goes well. Now, if there's a disruption today or grid collapse, we read different things in the papers. If there's outage, the utility companies come out and issue press release and say, it's TCN, no, it's not me. TCN will issue press release and say, it's not me, oh, it is, the utility company, or it is this particular GENCO that just shut off or shut down immediately and just affected the frequency and just put everything to a halt. So, but then, because the system operator and the market operator are also embedded in TCN, if it is truly the TCN infrastructure that caused the issue, will they hold TSP responsible, or will you say your brother is the one responsible for something that was done? So there's no transparency, because I'm not going to be sure that you're going to really be truthful about, okay, what caused this issue? Who should I hold on to for maybe attributions and all of those things? But when you have it independent and you know that all the stakeholders are part of it, you are able to quickly understand what the issues are and what steps to take immediately. So that's why the ISO is also there, and it is an independent system operator. While the last part of it is enforcement. Making sure you have a particular skilled entity that is able to enforce those penalties and those sanctions and those standards that you have created in the state. So they have very completely different roles that they are playing, and there's nothing like one is actually duplicating, or there's overregulation and all of that. And then regarding that overregulation and all that, the commission is also very mindful of that, and is also going to be looking at it. If you look at the law, maybe I just didn't mention that because I couldn't have said everything in the law. But if you look at the law was continue to churn out. If they feel like the current laws are still okay, there's nothing for me to change or whatever it is, they can continue on that. If you feel like, okay, there are two things that I do not agree with, issue an order or issue a regulation that corrects those two things, or you issue another one correcting those two things. But the most important thing is, this is another way of also avoiding overregulation, just so it's not that because I'm a commission, I want to be felt and I want to just keep issuing regulations. No. So we are also mindful of that, and those are taken care of already.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that last point, because it's a real concern for a lot of players. There's also the concern about, so let me just even read the question as it is, right? So on the creation of DISCO subsidiaries within state boundaries and transfer of assets and liabilities, Are there key issues to consider? We're actually meant to have someone from Ogun State on this panel, but I guess traffic and some other constraints, we unfortunately can't, because it would have been nice to have two different state regulators sort of talk, because you have 36 states. Now with the electricity law, each of these states can come up with their own frameworks and their own laws and their own things. So how do you ensure, like you said, continuity, some sort of homogeneity across all the states, so that an investor doesn't think, this thing is confusing. I go to Lagos, they will say this one. I go to Ogun, they will say this one. I go to Kano, they will say this one. So just if you can just talk on that a bit.
Okay, so I think you've asked two different questions.
Yeah, I know. Forgive me.
Okay, no, that's fine. So the first one is, what are the concerns, right, for this transition period? So I know that the first concern right now is you have different distribution companies saying, it's a lot easier for Lagos. It's Ikeja and Eko. And Ikeja and Eko is just Ogun State and Lagos State. But when you have likes of Enugu distribution company, you're talking Abia, Imo, Anambra, like 5 different states. Those are the kind of states that are, that need to worry about, how do I do this? Because, before I had just one HQ that took care of everybody. I just had people, transfer to different areas. How do I disaggregate and know that this is the liability? It's easier for you to say for assets, for instance, and say, the assets within these geographical boundaries, those are the assets that will go into the state. But another thing they'll tell you is, how about my liabilities? How about the tax? Because when CBN was giving me their names, the fund or facility, nobody was saying this is what is meant for Abia, this is what is meant for. They just gave me as Enugu Electricity Distribution Company, for instance. So how do I know that this is the portion that Enugu State Disco should be paying back to CBN? How do I know this is the part that Imo State Disco should be paying back? Those are the ones that are a bit more, how do I put it? Giving them concerns, Okay, I have IT infrastructure. I have I have a server in my HQ that takes care of every other entity or every other state. How do I do it? What do I do? So that's what it actually informed the order that was recently issued by the NEC. So NEC actually issued an order after doing consultations and said, okay, how do you split those things? How do we go about it? And it went ahead to differentiate the different types of assets, the different types of liabilities, and how they should be considered and how they should be taken care of. While some will retain with the HQ or with the holdco, who will maintain that central hub. Maybe, for instance, the IT issues and all of those things, they will still continue to manage those things and know that, okay, this is how I want to supply, and then maybe enter an agreement with the subsidiaries on how, I'm just letting you know what is in that order. So they just issued that order now, and there are timelines that have actually been put to each of those things and tasks that need to be done by the discos, how they need to go do some studies, how they need to compile some of those lists, and what submissions, when they need to submit, and when they need to start talking to the state commissions and also the NEC, so that at the end of the day, the transition process is finalized and wrapped up. So right. That has actually been already, that is what we saw last week. And then the second part of it is, you said something about maybe investors coming in, how do they worry about if I come in, if I want to navigate among states and all of that. First of all, states, and that's one of the benefits of decentralization. Before, you had a national. And if you look at the way it is nationally, if NEC wants to issue an order, it's not going to issue an order and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, this is what applies to you. 3, 4, 5, this is what applies to you. He issues an order and it applies to all discos. Whether you are Lagos or Abuja or Ikeja, or you are Yola, Jos, And I'm saying this because we all know that there are different things and peculiarities in different states. What Jos is facing, I'm not facing as Lagos. What is happening in Yola today is not happening in Abuja, for instance. So they have different strengths, different capabilities, different opportunities, different playing. So there's no level playground. And you can't also blame the national, because at the end of the day, they can't start. Then it was towards the end that you find NEC saying, okay, first tier discos, this is what is applicable to you, that kind of thing. So that's one of the advantages of decentralization. the state is now able to focus on its environment, on its climate. What are the things that are peculiar to this? What are my needs? What are my wants? What are the resources that I have that I can actually utilize and tap into? What can I encourage? So for that reason, it will be difficult for you to have the exact same law in Lagos, in Ogun State, in Yola, in Jos, in Kano. Yes, I know that because you get consultants who help you look into the law, and then you now leave it to the commission, the relevant state commission, to now issue specific regulations to help you. So at the law level, you can still have them say, Lagos, borrow me your law. Let me see what I can adopt. Let me see what I can take from Electricity Act. So at the end of the day, there's still some form of uniformity to an extent. But when you now go deeper into the secondary legislations, like the rules, the regulations that the commissions will be churning out, they will definitely be different. Because the environments are different, the needs are different, the wants are different, the resources are different. So as an investor, me coming into a state is for me to know what is the business environment and what is the regulatory environment. Does this suit me? Does the regulatory framework address the business concerns that exist in the state?
Right.
Because as investors, you have different reasons for investing in different states. So if the regulatory framework actually suits the concerns or addresses the concerns that I'm worried about and suits my needs, then I'll go ahead and invest in it and I won't have to worry. Yeah. So that's my response to that.
And I guess over time, I guess there will be competition among states, to attract investment. So, each state would try and position them. So I think it will be healthy in the long run because each state will ensure that they to attract the most. Abi? Yeah. All right, I have one more question before, and we're out of time, but I want to take at least 2 questions from the audience. My final question, first, the system operator, is that up and running fully now?
No. So there's 18 months for the ISO to come in, but of course the preliminaries are currently being done. You're already discussing and all of that, but you have 18 months from the commencement of the act, to make the ISO established and running, yes. So,
right. Now,
but pending that time, because you'll be wondering, okay, if the commission has been established, the commission is supposed to set up a unit in the commission that will take care of system operations pending the time the ISO starts to run fully.
Right.
So that will be covered.
Fantastic. So final question is there a one-stop shop? Because earlier you talked about how, investors or, people can even identify an aging infrastructure, identify some opportunity and approach the commission or approach the state to say, hey, want to invest in this. Is there a one-stop shop, a place where I can go to get information, get everything I need, get all the guidance on the licenses, all of that?
Okay, so first off, if you remember, I said something about data management. One of the things we want to put together is a hub where you are able to access data that you need. Like I said, we are a regulator. We are not going to be doing the businesses, There's the ministry, there's the agency that would be in charge of policies and the business and whatever it is. But as regulators, we are only going to be in charge of the regulations, monitoring, and enforcement. However, we see the need to create that data hub. We will give you the data that you can come as an investor to look into to say, what data do I need to be able to make this business decision? You'll be able to access it, and it is going to be an accurate real-time data, hopefully, That is the plan, that is the goal, that is the intention. Also, we're going to be making all the rules, regulations, and everything you really need to know about the commission very, very public. The website is going to be running soonest. You're going to be seeing all of this. If you have any information, any issues, any concerns, or whatever it is, you're able to access the website. You're able to see, okay, what do I need to know about this rule or regulations? You're going to have all the regulations, the rules, articles, resources. We're going to be posting them to the extent that we can as regulators. But that data management, where you can go and take the relevant data that you really require as an investor or as a business person, or as a researcher, that is actually one of the goals that we are also going to be looking into.
All right, can we put our hands together for her and thank her for those submissions? Do we have questions? We can take 2 quickly. Going.
Gone.
Once the regulator says gone.
No.
All right, so can we get a mic just quickly? Maybe we can, if we can borrow yours, Abby, if you don't mind.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your insightful narrations thus far. The question I have has to do with the supply licenses. Does the agency have a perspective right now as to what the qualifications for those supply licenses are going to be? And is there an intention to issue supply licenses to the existing discos?
Should I answer that, or you
Yes.
want to take the second
No, please.
question?
Do we have a second question? Because I think this is the only question. I think this is it. Yeah.
Chairman raised his hand.
Chairman, you have a question? Okay.
Okay. So first, regarding the conditions, terms of issuing the supply license, definitely there's going to be a regulation or a guideline that actually spells out what terms and conditions you really need to meet. Because obviously, if you're coming in to play in this field, it has to be well thought through. You have to be able to meet up on certain financial conditions, technical conditions, business conditions, legal conditions. And that's the way it's also at the current federal level. And that's the way it should be for any level, So definitely we're going to be issuing some guidelines that would spell out, it's going to be well spelled out on what you really need to have, what conditions you really need to meet before you can even approach to get any type of license. Each license is going to have its conditions spelled out under each of its, the header. So definitely you're going to have all of that. We're working on it as a commission. That should be out any moment from now, where it is well spelled out on what you need to have to be able to obtain that supply license by the time the commission starts to issue, or by the time the market starts to run on the application for supply licenses. To your second question on whether you can issue license to the disco to do supply. So it's just like the way you have it in, let me give you an example. And I'm not talking for the commission now, I'm talking as Kofo, who has read the law and who has read the act and who understands what is intended to be done. So if you look at the act, for instance, the act actually says things like, okay, for the transitioning, this is what you need to do, because as a disco, you really have two or more jurisdictions that you cover. To avoid issues, set up a subco, transfer the assets, liabilities, employees, everything you have within that state to the state's subco, and then you do that for the other one. So if the purpose is to be able to create that clarity or that distinction so that you as Lagos, you are not interfering into Ogun State, or Ogun is not interfering. The question is now, if that's the purpose and there's going to be a subco, how do you now be able to deal with a situation where the ODCO is coming again to say, give me that license for me to do the subco? Now, going to distribution and supply, what is the intention? If you look at the act and also the law, you will see that it is clear to say, okay, one of the things they want to achieve is specialization, that focus, improved operations and all of that. So at the end of the day, it's about having two separate entities who will be able to perform the functions independently. You are not going to have the two functions embedded in one entity. Ownership or no ownership is a different conversation entirely. And that is going to be determined on a case-by-case basis as you approach the commission. So if you're coming to the commission, and one of the guidelines that you're going to be seeing is governance framework on governance rules and regulations. Who are the people that are fit? Who are the owners that are fit to, occupy certain spaces, obtain certain licenses? You have it in every sector of the economy. It's not just in the power sector. You have it in banking. CBI will look at different things. You go to DSS, you do fingerprint, you do all of those things. But what we are saying is there's also going to be a guideline, because we're also going to be looking at who are the entities, who are the owners, who are the things. If it doesn't affect anything, then at that point, the decision is going to be made. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be clear. And the reasons and everything is going to be well spelled out to the licensee. The law is very clear on that. So it is not a straight yes or no answer for me here to say, am I able to give this person or that person? If that person makes application, but the most important thing is you're not having one entity at that point where it has been disaggregated. You're not going to have that entity that will be doing the two at the time. It is clear in the law. The law says distribution will continue to do distribution and supply till the point where there's disaggregation. So once that disaggregation happens, no entity will be able to combine these two. But then ownership is another conversation entirely, which is your question. and every application is going to be dealt with
Case by case.
on a case-by-case basis according to rules and regulations.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we celebrate Mrs. Kofo Olokun-Olawoyin one more time?
Thank you so
Executive
much for
Commissioner
having
for
me.
Legal Advisory, Registration, and Licensing. Thank you for
Thank you for having me.
Thank
For
you
the
so
conversation.
much.
Thank you so
We
much.
just another round of applause for both Ms. Kofo and Oluwaseun. Many thanks for moderating that very insightful discussion. We're just going to take a couple of photographs and then we'll move on. In the meantime, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our live stream audience, who is growing by the number as we speak. Of course, as we know, Lagos traffic as today punctuated and interfered with the plans for quite a number of our participants to be here on time. So that's going to have a little bit of an effect on our flow of events for today. That being said, we carry on and we are we're moving on quite well so far. So again, let's please have one last round of applause for this conversation we just had, Mrs. Kofo Olokun-Olawoyin, and moderated by Oluwaseun P. Very insightful conversation. Of course, we've been talking about regulatory shifts in Nigeria's power sector. Quite a number, a myriad of factors playing a role there. Dynamic shifts, many of them. We've had some key points that have come to the forefront today in terms of market trends, resilience, infrastructure, market trends, regulation, of course. But we want to get a quick keynote speech now. As I mentioned earlier, we're having some issues with getting everyone here because of the traffic. And for that reason, Dr. Kola Adesina is not here at the moment, but he's ably represented by Dr. Tony Yodewa, who is the Managing Director of Sahara Group, and would like to invite him up here to share with us his keynote speech. If we could please give him a round of applause.
Left your phone. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you're aware, Mr. Adesina is unavoidably absent here. And he told me about this very, very late last night. So forgive me, I don't have slides. I'm going to speak from my heart. So please don't record anything I say. Okay, my name is Tony Yodewa, and as I said, I used to be the managing director of Ikeja Electric. I played that role for about 4 years. And then since 2020, I've been the managing director of Sahara Power Group. So with all humility, I know a little bit about the power sector. And Sahara, as I've said, plays in the distribution space and in the generation space. So I'm assuming that most of us here have a good understanding of how the power structure is set up in Nigeria, because I'm going to talk over those things. And first of all, I must say thank you to the Commissioner, because she's done a very good job of articulating a number of things, which makes my job quite easy. But this session, the future of Power Africa, I was a bit intimidated when I said, Kola told me, and I said, Africa, we never do Nigeria finish. Yes, we're going to Africa. But it's good to be ambitious. And I think as the Commissioner has spent a lot of time talking about Lagos State and the regulatory environment in Lagos State. So, we're looking at going forward. But to do that, we need to not spend too much time just why are we where we are? Because with privatization in 2013, there are lots of expectations from government, but most important of all, from the people, you and I as consumers. People expected to have better power, have meters, and so on and so forth. What, over 10 years down the line, has it happened? I think the answer is no. Is it better than what it was? I'm a little bit biased, like I said. Yes, it is a heck of a lot better than it was. Every aspect. But we're nowhere near where we should be. And I'll try and be as practical as I can be. When I was managing Ikeja Electric in 2016, USAID did a study. And they said to get Ikeja Electric to be world-class, over a 10-year period, we need to spend an equivalent of $75 million a year to get it to be world-class. Now, let's assume we had that money. Are we patient as people now to wait to get to that 10-year thing? what were the problems from metering? And I think, again, the commissioner articulated those things, metering, so on and so forth, aging infrastructure. But I think, and then on the other side, and I'll come to the point I'm trying to make, on the other side, on the generation side, because Sahara, sort of operates Egmi Power Station, and we have 5 power stations in the southern part of Nigeria. Egmi is almost 40 years old. Today, when we try and buy equipment, we go to the original manufacturers, and they tell us we don't make those things anymore. So we have to go and find either one small company that can, for some reason is still making it, or we try and retrofit. So what are the problems? Yes, there are plenty, and we have many, many sessions like this, events like this, where Alistair, as Nigerians, we're very good at talking. We talk about all our problems, talk. Okay, so how can we move forward? I think one of the major problems we have is liquidity. And I'm going to get to what might be a very emotive topic. I mean, the commissioner again talked about enabling environment. People want to come and do transformer, bring, come, so on and so forth. At what cost? And where I'm going to is tariff. I mean, Mr. Druto is here. On the generation side, I'll tell you a little story. Last week, one of the CFOs of our power assets was celebrating that they got payment from MBET. And please, this is not a blame game, it's just the reality. What happens is the generating companies, at least on those who use gas, they buy gas from, ArcuGas or Savannah and so on and so forth, generate the power and sell to the bulk electricity trader, one buyer. And then they sell to the discos, and disco sells to you and I, and so on and so forth. But anyway, from the generation side, they have one buyer, and that's MBET. So they give an invoice to MBET, and MBET pays. So as I was saying, the CFO was celebrating last week. What's making you happy? MBET paid 30% of the invoice. This time last year, MBET paid less than 20%. So the CFO was happy that at least they paid 30% or almost 40%. So if I bought gas from Savannah, they give me an invoice, I generate power, sell to MBET. MBET pays me 30% of my invoice. By the time I try and pay salaries, buy equipment, how much am I going to give to the gas man? So he's not encouraged to invest in new wells. So we have a major liquidity issue. Where am I going? There's a cost, and who pays for it? Emotive thing is the customer. Now, we know about Band-Aid and so on and so forth. I mean, last week people were complaining about Band-Aid. And another confession here. Where did this whole Band-Aid, Band-BC and all, where did it start from? We'll take some responsibility for it, yeah? It started from Ikeja Electric in Magodo, because we sat down and we looked at it and said, look, this thing is not working. But there are some patches in the community who are willing to pay for power, pay the right price for power, provided they are getting it. So we thought, how can we make sure people get power? Program for 24 hours a day. They will pay. What people don't realize, the original target was Ikeja GRA. I won't go into the details, but it didn't quite work out. But for some reason, Magodo residents agreed. So we set it up. It was a test case, to be honest with you. And it worked. And then GRA came back and said, those people are enjoying 24/7, or at least 20, we want it. And it extended to Ikeja, GRA, Kappa, and so on and so forth, Ogudu. Now, one of the criticisms was that it was an elitist solution, yes, for the rich and Olu. But we had to do something. We're trying to make a point. And the regulator looked at it and said, okay, if we have a situation where people will get more hours of supply and they can pay for it, let us have this nationwide. That was the origin. I don't know whether people will beat me up for saying so, but that was the origin of Band-A, Band-C. And the whole idea, and I'm sure there are many people who work in discos here, is to move as many people as possible to Band-A so that they get the supply. But there is a cost, and that is what the regulator is there for, so that the distribution companies are not exploiting the public. And when we say the tariff, it is not the discos that determine the tariff. It's actually an electricity tariff because every entity gets paid from the money they collect from you and I. The disco gets paid. As a matter of fact, the disco keeps probably only about between 20 and 25% of what they collect. Everything else, the regulator gets paid, TCN gets paid, the generating company gets paid, and whether it's gas, everybody gets paid. So it is not the disco tariff. So the point I'm trying to make is, we talk about tomorrow. Where are we going tomorrow? What is happening with the state laws? Some states are more advanced than others. Lagos State and so on and so forth has gone further. I think Enugu and probably Kaduna have done some stuff. And it is a good thing. But in layman's terms, what is happening is that the market is opening up. Today, the primary supplier of power is through one route, from generation through embed, TCN to discos and so on and so forth. There are a few people here who are in the independent power space, IPP providers. Let us open up the market. Let there be competition, whether it is solar or whatever it is. Give people alternatives. Whether they are blending or they choose to go only solar, it doesn't matter. But give people alternatives, but people must be ready to pay. So the future that I see, or at least the company that I represent, continue to make investments. Today we're going to launch a 180 megawatt plant in Rivers State. Do we have the gas for it? Well, I'm hoping Mr. Adrotoye will give us gas. He's shaking his head. Yes? But even as we speak, there are challenges with evacuation because there's evacuation constraints in that area. So even if you have the 180 megawatts, you can only maybe evacuate only 60, 70. Does it make commercial sense? It doesn't. So we have to find alternatives. But the future, where we're going to, look, the answer lies with us. As I said at the beginning, it is very easy to say, why is it like this? So many challenges. You go to events, we talk about the problems. We're not finding solutions. We should be finding solutions. And we cannot solve it in one go. It has to be incremental. I know people have been patient, but we're pleading with you, you still have to be even more patient. Because, as I said, in my opinion, and please, we'll have a conversation about it, we have a liquidity crisis. Today, the tariff, the average tariff, is subsidized by government. So, for example, they say, madam, your tariff is meant to be 100 naira, but pay 50. The government will make up the other 50. So, Mr. Disco, because I said, the Disco is the collection agent. Go and collect 50 naira from madam. And as the commissioner said, first of all, to collect that 50 is near on impossible for a number of reasons. One, I'm inefficient. Yes, so you factor that one in. If madam doesn't have a meter, so I give her an estimated bill of, even if I'm honest, I say it's 50. She says, no, I didn't consume 15 naira's worth. I only consumed 30, and I'm going to give you 30 naira. I will first hold that 30 because something is better than nothing. The long and short of it is, remember, I was meant to collect 50. So if I collect 30, I've even tried. Then government is meant to make up that balance 50, Abi? Doesn't always do that. So how much do I then pay to the man who gave me gas? So where we are going to in tomorrow's world is meant to be contractual, whether it's bilateral, so you honor the contract. If you get into a contract with somebody, you honor it. If you fail, whether it's liquidated damages or what have you. But what is important is that liquidity is critical so that everybody is able to meet their obligations. If you are going to subsidize, look, in principle, I'm sure there are economists here, there's nothing wrong with subsidy. But it's a means to an end. But you should not subsidize consumption. Subsidize production, yes, and allow the market to grow. And if you are actually doing that subsidy, like I said, please meet your obligation. Unfortunately, we're not doing that now. But in tomorrow's world, where government is effectively taking its hands off, they're not saying you're on your own, but they're saying social, yes? But that's where we have to get to, because there was a reason why there was privatization in the first place. It's not government's business to run these entities. It's to create the environment where they can flourish, bring people in. And the regulator is there to make sure that I'm not overcharging. I'm not exploiting the consumer. But what is important is that that product must be available. You know, if the product is available, to a large extent, whatever that price is, people will pay. Today, let's use fuel, for example. What is the price of it? Are we not queuing up? We're still queuing up. There are some people who have had to park their cars and walk. But in the middle, from the bottom of my heart, this is where we are. Please do not be despondent as members of the public. I am also a member of the public. The organization I work for, we're committed to because the solution is not going to come from outside. If you think about it, we've been privatized for 13 years or whatever it is. How many foreign investors have come in? None. If you want to buy equipment from them, they will buy. They'll sell to you, but they won't get involved in your operations. People like Talabi here, they are taking the bull by the horns in IPP. It's only us that can solve our problem. Nobody else is going to solve it for you. But I guarantee you, if we have a regime where this famous investor can see how he or she is going to get their money back, foreign investors will come. But for as long as that's not going to happen, you won't get anybody coming in. But please don't be despondent. There is hope. It may not appear so, but there is hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much for that, Dr. Tony Yodo. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Please forgive me if I'm not. Okay, Mr. Tony, but we should get your last name right, Yodo, who is the Managing Director of Sahara Group. I like that you wrapped up on a positive note. We love the word hope in Nigeria, right? But you did touch on a number of things. Evolving times, I like that. So basically, we've been having this conversation for quite a bit, to be quite frank. Liquidity is another issue, and that's always present in its face. Then, more importantly, moving from being just a mere talk shop into being actionable players. So why do we have these gatherings? Why do we have this conversation if these conversations are not going to progress and become anything else? Then you touched on transparency, which I believe that each and every one of us in this room would like to see. And it's a good justification for whatever you pay. So generally, we're looking at opportunities and a brighter future, talking about the future of Power Africa. But talking about opportunities, it's great to have them. But how do we unlock them? And that's a question that our next panel is going to be discussing. I would like to invite to the stage for this next session. I would like to begin with ladies first. Mrs. Iyabo Soji Okunsanya, who I must mention has been extremely patient today. She was one of the earliest participants that arrived. So please let's reward her with a very warm round of applause and welcome her to the stage. She is the Executive Director of Corporate Investment Banking at Axis Bank. Welcome, and please join us on the stage, Mrs. Iyabo. Please have a seat. I'd like to invite, if she's here yet, Mrs. Jennifer Adige, she's the Managing Director and CEO of the Niger Delta Power Holding Company. I'm not sure she's in the room with us right now. If she is, I would like to invite her up to the stage. But if she's not, she's going to join us when she gets here. I would like to invite the Managing Director and CEO of Savannah Energy, Mr. Pade Durotoye, to please join us. A big round of applause for him, please. Now, we were meant to have Dr. Kola Adeshina be on this panel, and you could please let me know, Dr. Tony Yodowa, if you would like to, you gave us a beautiful unprepared sermon, so, I think you're on a roll, and we might as well have you on there. So please, a round of applause for him. For a fee, we can talk about that in a bit, a transparent fee. I would like to invite Mr. Tola Talabi, Managing Director and CEO of Electron, to please join us on the stage. A big round of applause, please. Thank you. I believe we have everyone here. And of course, this conversation is going to be moderated ably again by Oluwaseun P., who is a very well-rounded communication and media creative host and conference facilitator. Oluwaseun, a big round of applause for him once again, please. So we're talking unlocking opportunities, and yes, you're in good hands.
Thank you so much, Abby, and thank you for helping with the introduction. Would also just like to recognize the presence of the convener, who's finally made it here, Engineer Jude Nwoko Chinye. We welcome the convener, the Managing Director, CEO of Millwater. You're very welcome, Engineer Jude. I know you've been with us in spirit. watching all the proceedings. This panel is a suitable one for this conversation, and the keynote speech we just heard from the Managing Director of Sahara, I think, has already set the tone. Enough cho is the summary of the of that keynote address. It's how do we identify the solutions going forward. I think I'm going to start with this liquidity thing, and to just get perspectives from all our panelists on how we can solve the liquidity problem. I was actually reading a report yesterday that confirmed what Mr. Tony said. Gencos are getting sub 40% of their invoices. Subsidies, as you've said, are not entirely terrible, but when they hit about 200 billion monthly, that starts to raise some concerns. So just looking at this liquidity problem, what's the way forward? And I think we're going to start with the lady. Can we celebrate the lady one more time?
Thank you. I know that there is the way in which everything always comes down to where's the cash to do this, provide this energy on a 24-hour basis for businesses and for households. And I think that, I will start from this unlocking the opportunities and talking about why we are in this situation. The reality, and I know that a lot of people didn't like it, but you mentioned it, that if you want power, you have to pay for power. Subsidy on power has to completely go. That's the first step to unlocking opportunities. If it doesn't, financing power will always be a problem for financial institutions. Because you can provide the loans, but you must be able to see your way out, of that situation, because the loans have to be repaid. And when a Genco issues his invoice and gets 20% or 30%, no matter how you do the projection, the scenario situation on a stress basis will say to you that 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, in certain instances, or even 60% will not take you, to the bank appropriately. So government must, or embeds, or whichever entity is doing this purchasing, must be alive to his responsibility and pay his invoices as they fall due. We've had situations before in Nigeria where governments, realizing that there was a lot of issues, especially with the subsidy on petrol at some point, decided to be innovative and work with banks to pull together all of their standings after it had been verified, and then to come up with a note structure that allowed the banking industry put the cash behind it, and then people got paid. So in the power industry, we have to come to that type of solution where invoices should, after the verification process, be pulled together and a note structure created for it to allow payments to be made. I think that will be the most important step that has to be taken when it comes to and unlocking what is hidden now as a treasure in receivables. What that will do is that it will allow additional investment to come into the power sector. So when the commissioner was speaking earlier on, she had said Lagos needs definitely over 10,000 megawatts and gets between 1,000 and 1,500. Of course, that means that we're going to keep pushing the envelope in terms of poverty. It's not going to go away. The person that is by the roadside pumping the tire needs to have proper electricity. He doesn't have to achieve his goal by overextending himself from an input cost perspective. So if you truly want to eradicate poverty in Africa, one of the ways in which we must do that is that we must make power available. When power is available, input cost for manufacturing will be lower. If input cost for manufacturing is lower, we financing manufacturers will be happier. There is no running away from it. We must do what we need to do. And number one is subsidy has to go. Whoever is buying the power that is being generated must be more responsive in terms of meeting their obligations. Whoever is supposed to be funding or providing infrastructure service must make sure that we don't have a grid that is celebrated when it doesn't go down. It must be a given that the grid should not go down. But nobody is going to fund additional infrastructure in supporting the grid if we don't know if you are going to be able to work your way out of that loan. So financing is not the issue. The issue is ensuring that we can come into the banking industry with a bankable project. And bankable project means that your revenue assurance must be tight, and we must be certain that invoices can be settled when they are due. All the way to the last mile. All the way to the last mile.
All right. Yeah, I think we'll put our hands together for that. If you can just help pass the microphone to Mr. Durotoye. I just want you to respond to this. Mr. Tony, in his keynote address, talked about an incremental, patient approach to addressing some of these things. But we've just heard from Mrs. Iyabo Soji Okusanya that subsidies have to go if we even want to start having this conversation. So is there an incremental way? Is there a slower patient approach? And, she made a suggestion too about some notes type system, akin to what was done with fuel subsidies. Could that help a transition period?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a delight for me to be here. So that's a fairly challenging question. I prepared lots and lots of questions, but didn't prepare for that one. So let me start by saying, Tony said, let's not be despondent. I think he was speaking specifically to me because I am despondent. My balance sheet shows we've earned the right to be despondent. So when you talk about 30% payment, the GENCOs get paid 30%, we get paid 30%. The situation has now morphed from a liquidity issue to a balance sheet issue. There is just so much, or for so long, that you can keep a liquidity system broken before it becomes a balance sheet issue, where if you changed the tariff tomorrow morning, you wouldn't cure the problem anymore. Because the balance sheets of everybody, from the DISCOs to the GENCOs to the GASCOs, has been decimated. And, if you paid them what you owe them, it's not even going to work anymore. And so we need to think through, as, Iyabo mentioned, we really need to think of very innovative ways. Now, the good news is there's very little that is happening or will happen or has happened to Nigeria that has never happened anywhere in the world. Very little. So there's nothing that we're going to have to go to God alone for to say, we have never seen this before. In 2007, 2008, the United States went through a terrible global crisis in the real estate sector where their balance sheets were completely decimated. And there was a solution. I've spent a lot of time studying that over the last couple of weeks because I see it as becoming necessary for us to do a troubled assets type of recovery program for the electricity sector in Nigeria. Without a solution of such a nature, where we are looking at the balance sheets of all the players, particularly from the banking sector, because you can almost trace every hole created to a bank. If we're not resolving it at that level, we can't fix it. As much as we need to make the payments, I don't know that if you owed me $200 million in 2021 and you give me $200 million now, the time value of money leaves a hole. And the size of in the gas sector alone, the sector is owed about $1.4 billion And that 1.4 billion, sorry, not naira, just in case there's anybody there. That 1.4 billion has been owed for 3 years, 4 years. And our cost of financing is 19-20%. So if you pay anything less than a compounded 19-20% of 1.4 billion, you have no start. Of course, we will accept the money and say thank you. But fool me once, bring us. So when Tony said, will Pade give us gas? And I said no. I wasn't joking. Clearly, is there a way out? There must be. There's nothing that we would not be able to fix. Is there a transition period? Absolutely. There will be. But we have to understand that there's nothing else in the world, that its price is based on the affordability of the people who are buying it. So if you wanted to buy bathroom slippers tomorrow morning, bathroom slippers, its price, bathroom slippers will cost $2 in the US, but in Nigeria they don't have money, so we will sell it to them for 20 cents. It doesn't work like that. Electricity is a commodity. Gas is free. I always tell people, when people say, but we have gas, I'm like, the gas is free. The price of the gas is the price of getting it out of the ground. That's not free. The pipeline to get it, that's not free. The compressor systems, that's not free. Okay? But the gas itself is free. It's in the ground. It's free. So, we always think that because gas is free, it should lead to a lower cost of electricity in Nigeria. It can't. Today, our average price of electricity is about 8 cents per kilowatt hour, okay, in Nigeria. It cannot be, I say categorically, it cannot be delivered at anything for the immediate period less than 25 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, unfortunately, and I know I'm over-speaking, but please bear with me. Unfortunately, we are letting math fool us. So when people say, electricity in Nigeria is 280 naira per kilowatt hour for Band-Aid, that's not true. The Band-Aid people don't pay 280 naira. They pay for 10% of their electricity consumption, they pay 280. For the remaining 90%, because they're not sitting in the dark. All of us were here when the commissioner was speaking and the lights went off. The gen came on. Somebody's paying for it. So for the remaining 90%, you are paying 960 naira per kilowatt hour. Your blended average is 780. So if we start by trying to provide electricity for the people who don't have, and I need to come, but that's a separate mathematics, to say that the cost of no electricity is extremely high. Most people think that if you're not coming out of pocket with cash for no electricity, that it doesn't cost you anything. It's a negative charge on your potential, and it's extremely expensive. So if we think that there's somebody that is sitting in Nigeria that is paying 280 naira, none of us is paying 280 naira. We're all paying somewhere in the region of 700 to 800. Those are the lucky ones. The unlucky ones are paying millions per kilowatt hour for power they don't get, for possibilities they don't achieve, for potential they don't crystallize. And we must start thinking like that, because the moment we're able to, the problem changes. We are now looking at how do we reduce the cost of electricity. And that is where we should be going. Thank you very much.
All right. Now, staying with this, Mr. Tony, over to you. Do we just bite the bullet and remove the subsidies so that the tariff question can be resolved? Or, I read somewhere, and this is someone's, a think tank, proposed this solution. They were like, discos can ring-fence revenue from Band-Aid customers exclusively for settling Genco invoices. But Mr. Durotoye has even said, even if you settle those invoices and you pay, the hole in the balance sheet is still there. So do we need to bite the bullet? Because as he said, we're already paying so much for not having power. There's that negative cost. Generators, all of that, self-generation is already costing us so much. So what do you say?
You see, this whole tariff thing, it depends on which hat I'm wearing, yes? As an operator, I'd say yes, bite the bullet, yes? But immediately, I have to be held accountable to deliver the service. But it will help alleviate the challenges we have with liquidity. But if, like I said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with subsidy. It's where you apply that subsidy, yes? If you subsidize the gas man, yes, so that he can reduce his cost. Well, not so much reduce his cost, he's subsidized. The end user will not have to pay whatever they are meant to pay today or not even paying actually. So yes, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, again, using fuel as an example, the president, when he was inaugurated, subsidy is gone. And we know the wahala it created, but have we died? It's painful. Look, because people still see electricity as a social service. But has just said it is a commodity. So we have to go beyond that. And one has to be, you have to have a human face when you say these things. But if we don't do it, then we'll continue going on. And one day, the system will collapse. Or everybody will answer his or her father's name. Yes, and you become your own local government. But there's only so many people who can do that. What of the masses? Look, early March, yes, my colleagues in Ikeja Electric, they were visited by the Air Force. And the rank and file, and I don't mean any disrespect, who operated, is their anger genuine? It is. I don't know the equivalent, the corporals and so on, who were beating my colleagues and kicking the doors and breaking the air conditioning, because they don't have power. Now, as far as we are concerned, we've supplied them, they didn't pay. Even when I was the MD, I remember going to Abuja, they just don't pay. Now, they'll tell you that the commander will tell you, and the allocation is not enough. But if government decides to give the armed forces free power, no problem. Yes? But pay me so I can pay. Yes? So removing the subsidy is one way. It will help with the liquidity issues. But we have to do it with a human face. Yes? And know that, look, that concept of is a social thing that government is supposed free. Yes? So that has to be done in conjunction.
All right. Okay, so let's move away just briefly from this painful matter over to Mr. Tola Talabi and talk about, when we look at the supply mix now, thermal, gas, about 70%, and then hydro, about 30%. Do you see, I don't know how long it would take, but do you see that, alternative, sustainable, green, whether it's wind, solar, can, come into this mix and reduce some of the pressure that we're experiencing, with the big power Genco gas companies? Do you see that happening within a short period of time? Is that somewhere we can even look for an answer?
Okay, so I think as is today, renewable sources such as hydro, solar have a role to play in the availability of power. However, regardless of the source of generation, you still require investment, right? Hydro is very capital intensive upfront. The price of solar is coming down, but to effectively harness solar, you need storage, right? And also you need a lot of land, right? So land is in areas where there is a large demand of power, that there's a lot of people, land is expensive. So there's no getting around the investment, right? Definitely, actually, yes, there will be some relief from diversifying the generation sources, but even that will only be encouraged if the enabling environment, primarily bankability of projects, is assured, because you have a market where producers can produce power, it can be transmitted or distributed, there can be collections, and there isn't a market regime that isn't financially bankable, right? Now, I think one of the things that's very important is that, and maybe, it's good to have this type of forums, and, maybe it goes out into the press and people hear, is that we need to be honest with ourselves in this country and recognize that we do not have the resources to subsidize power. The country does not have the financial resources to do it. And I think that narrative needs to be clearly out there, where the general populace recognizes that and is made to understand that, so that the willingness and the ability to pay, the willingness to pay as a consumer, is really there, because folks understand that, look, there's no other way around it, right? And I think Mr. Durotoye alluded to the negative costs, right? And it all manifests in all our lives, right? How many stories of someone going to a hospital and there's no power and the person dies? How many jobs? We're a country with a massively young population, literally tens of millions of people that are unemployed. Well, we need to manufacture to employ those masses of people, and we can't manufacture if we don't have reliable power, right? So I think the narrative really needs to be out there. Yes, we can look at diversifying, but that diversity is only going to come from more investment. The good news, though, is the funds are available. We have trillions of naira in pension funds that, potentially, even as local investment, can go into the sector. But none of us here will want our pensions to go into a situation where someone is paying 30% of an invoice. Thank you.
All right. We can put our hands together for this panel. Each of them have spoken. I think it's been brilliant. I'm going to stay on this renewable thing for a bit. And Mr. Tony, you were smiling when he talked about, dipping into the pension fund. And you also said during your address that $75 million is needed annually for as investment for something. I was reading something recently that said that, let me just read it out. Yeah, it says to bring 1 megawatt of generation capacity, you need $500,000 to about $1.5 million. To build 1 kilometer of a 330 kV line, you need about $1 million. And for a kilometer of 132 kV, about $400,000. Right, and so this person was of the opinion that it's money and investment that can really drive this thing, and not even legislation as much. All right, so the money is there, as Mr. Tola said. What do we do to attract this investment to transform the renewable space and make renewable power available?
Whether it's renewable, is grid, is cold water, whatever it is, first of all, in your house, you want to turn on the switch and get power. How it comes, you don't really care. But the guy who is making that investment, as Madame said, it has to be bankable. And let me tell you what is also a bit of a challenge. When you are reeling out those numbers, what currency did you use? Dollars. But the tariff, whether it's cost reflective or is not, we pay in naira. So let me give you an example. In 2013, time of privatization, when some of us, got loans from banks to acquire some of these assets, the exchange rate was about 100 and what? Madam, do you remember? In 2013? What is the exchange rate now? Yes? Now, nobody begged us to go and get a loan in dollars. But at the time, it was actually cheaper. So today, if I want to buy a transformer, let me even bring it down to the smallest thing, a meter. It's in dollars. With all due respect to the so-called meter manufacturers in Nigeria, they assemble. Yes, they don't manufacture from scratch. So the point is, and again, people in finance will say it's 101, yes? You take a loan in foreign exchange, yes, and your income is the difference, it's in naira. So all this big grammar I'm saying is that, look, it must be bankable. It's as simple as that. If it is not banked, nobody will come. And that's why in the however many years we've had privatization, what happened to the Siemens project?
I didn't think we'll go there, but I'm glad that you said that.
Let's go there. It's a reality. As they said, the money is there. But it's only when you have a grant, yes, that, somebody will give you money and say, okay, fine. But once it's a loan, of course, you have to pay back. And if it's not bankable, they will not give you that money. It's as simple as that.
So it seems like a hydra-headed problem. We can't escape all the macroeconomic realities, FX, this, all that stuff. So where do we go? Mr. Durotoye, the mic is coming. It's going to come.
God, you didn't ask me that question.
Where do we go?
The answer is obvious, and it's full liberalization after we fix the balance sheet issues. Full liberalization essentially is a political will issue. So is there anybody in the country that still believes that we should be subsidizing electricity? The answer is there are people who are hoping that we will be able to, but they know in their heart of hearts we can no longer afford it. And it's a political issue in the sense that even the politicians know. The Minister of Power has been saying, has been on that campaign for a while now, saying we have to do it. There are many ways in which it can be done, but the fear that it will lead to a form of political backlash outweighs the fear that keep people in poverty and they won't know, because that's the choice we're making. The choice we're making is not a choice of can you afford it or not. Is if I don't give you electricity, you will not be able to afford it. So it's something they know. It's which one is the bigger cloud, which one is the bigger fool. We continue like this, or we actually begin to take the painful steps of taking our people out of this death spiral that we've entered. Make no mistake. The people, you don't start by trying to give people who have no work electricity. And that is something that we've tricked ourselves into thinking that we should. The electricity that we need in Nigeria will not start by giving people electricity at night, even though most of us, that's what we think about, that let me have light at night. No, it is electricity that is going to generate the productive capacity. That is where we start. That sector is already paying very high. Take a drive between here and Ibadan, and you get to Shagamu, just once you go past the Redeem Camp, all the way past the interchange, is factories left and right. And we all know why. In that area, they have two things. They have steady electricity for factories. They have not paid anything less than 300 naira in a long time. And they have gas. And what do you see is factory after factory. Every new space of land, there's a crane there. That is what will happen to Nigeria in a very short space of time. Factories will come in, jobs will be created, houses will be built. You don't look at electricity as something that will punish people. We can see it. If you go from here to Ibadan, you will see it. You don't have to imagine it. It's there. So once we make that decision, we would unlock the economy. And then my final point, we need to stop thinking of attracting investment. There are people whose kids will not eat if they don't deploy capital. The capital that we need is looking. We don't need to attract them. They are looking every day and checking. Is it now? Is it now? Is it now? They're looking to come and Nigeria can almost single-handedly transform the economy of Africa by just fixing this block, this repellent that we have to capital. So we're repelling capital. That's what we're doing. So once we stop repelling capital, the capital will come. Let the prices be right. Let the balance sheet be fixed. Let there be assurance that, okay, once you get there, because, most companies will say, I don't want to be the first. So if you fixed the prices and you fixed the assurances, everybody will be saying, who's the first person to go there? Let me see if he goes into the room, if he comes back with a shirt. So you are going to need to give the first people a bit of guarantee that, come, it's okay. If I change my mind and I go against what I said, the conditions, I will pay your money back. And it's a contingent liability. We're going to have to do it. And once we've done that, the momentum will build, the capital will come. The first ones are going to be very expensive because the risk premium is very high. But as they succeed, the risk premium will start coming down. I need to drive everything down.
Is that what Mr. Tony was saying about not subsidizing consumption, but subsidizing the producers and the people generating stuff? So if I've heard anything so far, it's political will. It's a combination of political will and sort of changing the mindset of the populace and helping them see that this thing is a commodity. You must be willing to pay something that is close to the proper price. I think, Mr. Atola, you referred to that area. Is that correct? Now, Mr. Duruti, I'll stay with you one more point before I come to Mrs. Yabo. You talked about a troubled assets recovery program because you've alluded to this hole in the balance sheet. Do you want to give us a little more, insight into what that idea is?
So it's not we have actually done something similar. I think it's called NEMCO or something similar in the past in Nigeria. So it's not the first time we'll do it. But essentially, the way it works is this. I am a gas supplier. I sell electricity to a GENCO. The GENCO sells electricity to a DISCO. The DISCO, assuming that it collected 50%, 100% of what it was supposed to collect, but only got, was a 50% subsidy, means gets paid 50% of what is due. Government owes it. Okay? You therefore pay a small portion to you. Now, if you don't cover 100% of your cost, you will go to a bank. Okay? You pay her, GENCO. She doesn't cover 100% of what is due to her. She goes to a bank and gives me some. I collect my own portion. I go to a bank. We have therefore moved all the liabilities of government onto the banking sector. Okay? The banks, for various reasons, are sitting on troubled assets. So what they did in the US was the finance sector and the housing sector, they were able to trace all the shortfalls because there's no such thing as negative cash. It's either is a liability, a payable to a bank or to a private sector that ultimately ends in the bank. So what they just did was they went to the banks and said, sum total all the money this sector owes you. Let's know what it is from the banks. And then they started talking about moving cash. So they created 400, at the beginning it was close to 700, but it ended up being $433 billion. But not 1 cent of cash moved. They didn't, Congress did not move 1 cent of real cash. They went to the banks and they moved it off their balance sheets and put it into the equivalent of AMCON. And then said, I have forgiven your debt. If the debt I have forgiven you is not enough, I will use the balance to own equity in you. Okay? So they did that troubled assets recovery program. It started from 2007, ended about 2011, 2012. And they made money out of it because they were able to allow the sector to breathe again. They started reinvestment. They re-energized the U.S. economy. And they were able to use that to move things forward. It's not very hard. And a youth corps can do it.
Is our economy strong enough to...
We don't have a choice.
Can we do this? Because the U.S. economy is quite large.
You don't have a choice. You are going to have to do it.
What do you think, Yabo? It looks like the banks play a critical role in this sort of initiative.
I said it before, and just for emphasis, subsidy in its entirety must go. If it does not, we will not be able to resolve this issue. Because there is no bank that is going to expect that it's going to provide financing when historically only a fraction of revenues are collectible. It's not going to happen. Well, I don't know what other banks did. But I'll tell you that when privatization happened in Nigeria, at Access, we reviewed the entire process. We reviewed what the legislation was. We looked at how revenue was going to be collectible, and we decided that actually we cannot play here. And the reason why we couldn't play is what has manifested. So government has to muster all of its political will, whatever is left after removal of fuel subsidy and the removal of all other subsidies. It must muster that political will and take away this electricity subsidy. See, in my house, when they moved us to Band A, my bill went from about 150,000 a month, it was approaching 600,000 a month. Nobody told me what to do. Okay? I became like the average person who lives in the UK. I started asking everybody, put on the lights if you're not in your room. Put on the lights if you're not in your room. Because I saw that, this is no longer sustainable. Okay? When that didn't work, or it didn't work as well as it should work for my pocket, I decided that, okay, I'm going to have to install a solar system and run on solar at certain times during the day, and then run on the disco's provision at other times during the day. I have successfully been able to bring down my cost in spite of the solar intervention to about 300,000 a month. That is still very high, but at least it makes sense. So we Nigerians have to get into a situation where we know that what we cannot afford is to have ourselves in darkness. It does not make sense for the youth. It does not make sense for the aged. It does not make sense for productivity, for the productive part of the population. It does not make sense any which way. And, there's one picture. I don't know if you can see it from where you are. But, it's an attempt to show. Can you see this? It's supposed to be the world at night. Okay? So you can see certain, at the upper part, you can see what looks like, is like yellow, right? It just shows the other part of the world at night. And then, so this is Africa at night. You see some yellow at the bottom, which is the South Africa. And then you see some yellow at the tip, which is North Africa. And then you then see some little bit of yellow. So this is where Nigeria is. A little bit of yellower, if I can use that word, around Lagos. And then the rest is just as is. This is a loss of potential. This is unrealized dreams and aspirations. This is a continent that its future is held back because it has no power. That is as bad as it is. And government must do what government needs to do. So if we leave this room, we must understand that subsidy on electricity has to go. As painful as it may be, it has to go. Now, the issue of dealing with the previous situation and the balance sheet reality and hold that we see is something that government, when government is ready, together with industry players, we have to come together in a room and work out something that should work. And I said before that it had happened when an attempt was made to deal with the issue of subsidy in the downstream sector. Government came together with industry players and with the finance industry also and said, let's put this together as promissory notes. Promissory notes were issued by government. A portion of what was outstanding was renegotiated. The banks funded the promissory notes, and government paid back the promissory notes, over a period. So government must pull together such a situation in the power sector to realize what is being, a portion of what is being owed. And then from there, we have this complete liberalization. A lot of people complained when it started in the fuel, whatever. And then we saw 1,000+ fuel. Now, every time Dangote quarrels with the NNPC and the fuel price goes down, the whole of Nigeria is jubilating. And the reality is that, there's still an opportunity to even shrink that further. So let it go so that we can breathe. That is what my conclusion will be. And the banking industry will then be able to put money behind it. We cannot put money behind this sector now if it is at 20 to 30% of revenue collection.
Okay. Okay, so that point is clear. And again, like we've said, political will is needed. Government's fiscal responsibility is also needed. And just, creatively, in collaboration with all the stakeholders, thinking of ways to resolve all these challenges and plug the holes in the balance sheets. Are there opportunities that this new electricity law and, the decentralization and the new state frameworks that are being developed, are there any opportunities that these present, especially as we look at some of these things? Yes, Tola?
So it's a mixed bag. I think that in the case of states that have vibrant economies, in the near term, they can seize that opportunity to kind of ring fence their markets, still driven by commercial viability primarily, right? Because I think for any state to deceive itself that it will be able to maintain some kind of subsidy regime would be just an even worse situation than we have at the National Grid, right? So I think what they need to do along the lines of what the law says really is liberalize, look to efficiency in terms of ensuring that when folks come in to apply for licenses, the process is transparent and expeditious, for them to ensure that they enforce the laws, starting with themselves, paying for the electricity that their own agencies consume. Because one of the most ridiculous things that we have is a situation where you have government agencies not paying for power, and then at the end of the day, expecting that somehow we would get some of the types of results that we need, which is literally a buoyant, vibrant market. So they themselves need to lead by example by paying for the energy that they consume. They need to be as transparent and efficient as possible. And I want to say that we've seen this, right? We've seen this in the telecom sector, right? I'm sure most people in this room are old enough to remember when, we literally didn't have telephony, whereas the whole of the world did. And all government had to do, government didn't invest one kobo. All they had to do was to get out the way, create a regulatory environment and allow for market forces to run. And investment came in, and today it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is actually a huge revenue earner across the board, taxes, however. So with states, it's the same thing. Just get it right now, allow for a liberalized market, transparency, and the investment will come in, and the states that embrace that will leap ahead of those that don't. So really the opportunity is to just get it right from the beginning, and then the benefits will come for the economies of those states.
Right. I haven't read the law, especially with the Lagos electricity law myself, but I imagine that you experts have. Is there any? Can the states do that? Can they? Have some sort of liberalized setup where if I set up a small hydro plant and I'm doing my feeding or whatever, I can charge premium. Right. So that's hope there,
the
right?
The idea is you can charge whatever you want. That's okay. The commissioner has gone. Yes. Mm-hmm. The whole idea is to open the market up. Yes. So once you say this is my cost of production, this is and yes, is there a willing buyer? Once the state zone we say no, I say to bring this thing here, it cost me 10 naira. You say no, you can't charge 10 naira, you must charge 6. How? It doesn't make sense. So yes, you can.
So this is the hope then, because I'm looking for a positive place to hang this conversation.
But like I said, ultimately it is you and I. Yes. Once there is a buyer, you will sell your market. Yes. The state is there to ensure that okay, fine, you're not overcharging, whatever that means. But I don't think that the state can say you must sell it at a certain amount.
Right.
Then we're back to subsidy, and they say it will leave me worse.
So you talked about, patient incremental, and Mr. Dorothy said, we have industrial corridors. So for new investors and people thinking to do projects, right, should that be the focus? Because these guys are already paying high, they can pay. So can they be the focus then? Make this power available along industrial corridors?
You see, it is easy to what we call MD, maximum demand customers, industrial, because they are passing that cost to you. Whatever they are producing, now you and me, they pay. But for consumers, yes, residential, that's where the challenge is.
Right.
So it's easy to go to industries. They will pay for the power, so knowing that they can pass that cost on. And if they can't, to the consumer, then there'll be a problem. But for those of us who are just consuming to watch Netflix or whatever it is, that's where the challenge is.
Right. Well, we're going to take questions, so please, if you have any question, feel free to interrupt us. We're going to wrap this up very soon. Mr. Druto, do you have any other thoughts to add, especially as we look at this, decentralization, the states, creating their own frameworks and their own laws and their own, regulators?
So I am very hopeful about, the potential impact of the Electricity Act, but from a potentially perverse angle. And, one of the, I did say that the issue of tariffs is a political issue. I can imagine how uneasy lies the head at the center when you are trying to balance different regions with different economic, capacity and making a decision around the centralized price. That must be extremely hard. If you decentralized it and then you made the different states responsible for dealing with that risk, it actually does become simpler. We believe very strongly in one case that we are seeing, that we're working on right now, where there is one state that is making all the right moves to be able to take themselves out of this general problem. And we believe that once we see one or two good examples, the other states will begin to come. We're seeing lots of corridors. We're seeing cities. We're seeing IEDNs, individual electricity distribution networks around the state, where people are coming and say, I will pay 300, I will pay 320. Just give it to me and let it stay. We're seeing that, and we believe that those literal IEDN lines will essentially become what we'll see at the states, and that will then become the way in which it would run. So you will see an example where, I don't know it will happen in Lagos for various reasons, but let me just pick a random state. Okay, let's say...
Tell us the state you are excited about.
No, I can't. Let me say, imagine that Ogun created a situation where Ogun said, you know what, we're going to do 350. But because 350 is less than 7 something, everybody runs in. The demand and the supply into that state actually goes down. The economic capacity of that place will begin to drive development in such a way that it will actually bring down the average cost of power and then attract it more. Other states, such as Lagos, will then have to respond by then cutting theirs to 280, 290. And then, so you will begin to see all of this dynamics. The future, the next 5 years, if we can solve some of these fundamental issues, we've spoken extensively, I'm not going to talk about it again, but we must resolve the issue of the tariffs. The way the tariffs are calculated right now, they're completely wrong. Mm-hmm. So there's no point in even looking at it. If it is not dollarized and in the range of 22, 23 cents per kilowatt hour, don't even try. Just leave it. Once we have that, find the political will and the strength to do that, things will start moving forward. It's a very positive environment that we have ahead of us.
Fantastic. I'm glad that we're wrapping up on a positive note. And we started with you, so we're going to wrap up with you, Mrs. Iyabo Sojoku-Sanya. So just to touch on, some of the points that have been raised, is there hope with decentralization, with states taking the initiative? Even though, Mr. Dorothy, I really wanted you to tell us that state that you're excited about.
I truly think that, there is hope. We just have to move in the right direction. Financing is available. Financing is available in the quantum that it should be available and in the currencies that it should be available at. The reality is that the Nigerian banking industry has grown significantly. So there is capital to do transformational projects. And we have to. The reality is that a lot of the funding that went into the telecom sector actually came from the banking industry in Nigeria. A lot of manufacturing companies are financed now within the country. Individual banks, at least the bigger banks, can write checks of $200, $300 million to a single client without, flinching. So financing is available. Financing for renewable energy is even more available because we are being thrown, I don't want to call it the baits. The guys who know that they've done a lot to destroying the world from a climate perspective are busy looking for a way to make good some of the things that's been done wrong before. And they have these financing that's available. It's cheap enough. Yeah, it's in the currency where you have to hedge so that you don't suffer unduly if there's a devaluation in the currency. But the reality is that financing is available in local currency and in foreign currency. We just need to have, the right projects, and we have to get government to make those projects bankable by ensuring that what needs to be done is done.
Fantastic. Haven't you enjoyed this panel, ladies and gentlemen? Let's put our hands together. Fantastic conversation. The panelists don't leave. We want to make it interactive. We have some time. And we want you to scan the barcode from wherever you are and send in your question. But if you have a question and you would want to just ask, should we make that possible? We want to keep it strictly barcode. Okay. So we want to use technology. And we also want to kind of document, because if there's anything the conveners of this event have said, is that this event is some sort of trigger for an ongoing conversation. So it doesn't end today. So some of these questions can come in as contribution as well, and there will be follow-up beyond today. So I think that's why it's important to use the barcode as well. Do we need to bend? Sorry. Sorry, I'm making you bend. If one of our ushers has a barcode on the phone, it can also take it around and people can just scan it. That might also help if... Yeah. So if you're sending your questions... Actually, we should have done this earlier. I'm so sorry. So that by now, the questions would have started coming in. Dr. Nwoko, we can allow you to do one question while we're... Can we put our hands together for the convener?
He just gave me a doctorate degree, free of charge. Thank you, Oluwaseun. Thank you, Abe. And thank you to our amazing panelists. This room, you don't want to know the net worth of this place right now. We should put an insurance at that door. Thank you so much for bringing such robust insights to our conversation today. I don't have a question. They said there's a space for my address. I just felt that we've come to a very important part of this conversation. Before the interactions begin, I'll probably maybe ask one or two direct questions from the panelists, but then shed a bit more light on why we felt this conversation should start now. If you listen to all the operators speak, because this is the operators forum, you'll see that everybody here is speaking from a place of burden and passion for the sector. For you to be operating in the power space right now, you are a superhuman being. You're not a normal person, because it is one of the most. I'm trying to choose my words. It's one of the most chaotic sector right now. Highly regulated yet chaotic, such that if you bring in your investment, it will take a level of faith and belief in the Nigerian vision for you to remain in business past 3 years. So I want us to put our hands together as a sign of appreciation to everyone here, seated here, and the entities. No, I mean it, please. If you are doing it, do it generously. And the entities that they represent. I have a personal relationship with everyone on stage and even their principals, and I know exactly how interesting the dynamics are placed. My question is to Mr. Talabi, my first question, sir. We, the youth of Nigeria, we believe, somebody should send him a microphone. We believe that, you see, the Nigerian spirit is a dogged spirit, right? You represent that. We discuss business privately, and we see how you have fought to realize the vision you've conveyed to us in the sector a couple of years back. It has not been without blood. Can you just instill some hope in young entrepreneurs watching us online right now, seated in this place, just speaking to your own journey? Many times you would have packed it all up and walked away, and you will still, the value of your life will still be the same, or even better, because you sleep better. But something kept you. There's something that's driving you. Can you, because there's somebody here who's thinking of opening a renewable energy company, no matter how small the scale is. Because I believe the Nigerian electricity problem, we must approach it one Nigerian at a time. The change of our mindsets, culture, behavior, and our approach. What's your message to we Nigerian youth? Investors in the sector, potential investors in the sector.
So I think that, the approach that we've taken, right? And maybe if I look at the journey that's been a 14-year journey in the power sector, I remember probably some of the first times I met Mr. Udue, back when he was at Ikeja Electric. And, the difference between some of our interactions then and interactions now, right, I think is that there is a certain enthusiasm that wasn't there before amongst all industry participants to collaborate, right? And I think
that's a good thing, right?
That's a phenomenal thing that's going to make a lot of difference, right? And the reason why it was more difficult before was that there were, the constraints, right, that the regulatory environment put on the sector made every market participant say, okay, let me just take my defensive position first, right? And then from there, I can try to figure out, what can happen. Now, I believe if I go to Mr. Durotoye and I say, you know what, yes, there are these challenges in the sector, but here's how I can ring fence a particular situation that will ensure that, yes, so maybe gas isn't being paid for in general, but this particular project, this particular free zone that I'm going to take your gas to, I can show you that it will be bankable, we'll do business. So I say that to say, now is a great time to get into the sector because market participants are looking to innovate. They're looking to find structures to say, come in, collaborate. Then there's also the fact that there's not a lot of expertise in this sector. So literally, if you're a young person or an entrepreneur, you can go learn, understand the regulations, understand where the gaps are. If it's metering you want to play in, well, can you go and find a technology now that, is a cheaper but still accurate meter that you can come in and fill that gap? The price of solar panels are coming down. Can you go and find an angle in that? There is, electric vehicle technology. You're seeing the price of electric vehicles coming down across the world. Is there an angle there to come in? So I think that for sure, it's literally one of the most exciting spaces to come into. I always tell people that, look, our company Electron, we play in generation. We also collaborate with distribution companies to invest in their distribution and ensure customers get power. But literally, if there were 100 other electrons, companies like ours, we still wouldn't be enough for the market.
Absolutely.
So I think the thing there, though, is garner knowledge about the industry. Try to understand the gaps and try to see where you can innovate and find solutions.
Absolutely.
So literally right now, the marketplace is open. Lagos State, for example, Ogun State, Ekiti State, the states that have created their own laws, all these states need investment, they need innovators, they need market participants, and I think the floor is open. Ourselves here, I'm sure, would also look to see more players come in that we can collaborate with. Thanks.
Let's appreciate Mr. Tola Talabi, the MD of Electron. Your success story will be one of our highlights in some of our subsequent newsletter. One of the things that the Future of Power platform hopes to do is to gather conversations like this, enlighten the public as to the opportunities that exist within this space. Because some people think that you have to own a GenCo to operate. He's been running a business, the power space, for the last 14 years. He has several projects between Oyo, Ogun, and Lagos states. And he's been doing phenomenal, well, not without the challenges, not without the sweat and blood, but he has a team and they are thriving. I know some of the members of his board who are sitting right here, and they'll tell you that Mr. Tola Talabi and his team are doing great. Let's appreciate him one more time. We're tying this together, and I'm bringing this home. I'll ask Attorney, because we've seen Sahara morph in several phenomenal ways. What does an average entrepreneur need for starters? Is it vision? Is it funding? He's spoken about insight, education, understanding the dynamics of the sector. What would you place, and in what order, for those who are coming from your experience? This is not an academic question. We're trying to enlighten them. Yeah.
Is a trap, huh? No, seriously, the first thing is what you said, the vision. Yes, what do you want to do? And why do you want to do it? And then you have to be determined. Because when you then sit down with potential investors, really and truly, they're investing in you. Yes, that thing you're saying, how much you yourself believe in it. Look, pardon my expression, money like better thing, yes?
Absolutely.
If somebody has a good idea, they have educated themselves about it, they are passionate about it, and they are realistic. They know what the challenges are, and they are saying, this is how I think I'm going to overcome, I'm going to tackle these challenges. You will get the funding you need. It won't be automatic. It will take some time. But it is how passionate you are and how well educated you cannot, you see, because this is, forgive whether a Christian or Muslim, it's not miracle. There's a space for that. But you must be well educated and you must believe in that thing. As I said earlier, today, it's a lot of money, the power plant we're building in River State. It should be commissioned in the next month or thereabouts. Somebody will look and say, he's only a mad person with all these things that is going on, but they won't give me gas. There's evacuation constraints. The tariff is not right, yet you're investing that amount of money. Somebody has to do it because you believe that we're going to get it right. And it's not somebody from somewhere. You are going to be a part of that solution. I remember when Governor Fashola was minister, and he said to us once, he says, look, you're not just in the business of selling electricity, you're actually selling hope. What's the other option? What else is the option? What do we do? We should just fall down and die? We must. There'll be winners, and yes, there'll be losers, but you must believe in that thing, and you must educate yourself. The money will come.
Can we appreciate? These men are speaking from a wealth of experience. I think my own time is up. I wanted to just mention that we are part of that platform for education. One of the focus for our next newsletter that will be going out. If you have not subscribed with us, you can do that via our website, futureofpowerafrica.com. You will be getting the full expose on the Lagos state laws and how you can play at various levels. There are different levels of licensing being granted right now. The commissioner that came today, if you took her card, she's actually one of those that can guide you in the licensing you need to operate in the area or the spectrum of the business that you want to play in. So we're saying this for the records that we are here at the Future of Power Africa to cross that bridge and to enable you both with information and directly pointing you to the right direction for the next steps you're about to take. I would come to Mr. Pade. Mr. Pade is a mentor in business and in life, full disclosure. So this time I want him to bring his, if you like, his pastoral heart to this conversation. Because he has been speaking as the MD of Savannah. Right now I want him to speak like a father, like a mentor, and like someone who I know he is, that believes in the Nigerian dream. Sell hope to us, sir.
Hope always starts with potential.
Yes, sir.
And I do not know of anywhere where there is the quantum, or the size of the shortfall that we have in Nigeria, and therefore the size of the upside. I have my team here with me. There's people from Savannah. One of the reasons why we spend so much time talking about the power sector and prodding, every day, we look at it from this angle and we look at it from that angle, is we want to be sure that the day somebody finds the answer to unlocking this thing, we're one of the people. We're not far from, we're either the ones that fix it or one of the ones that are close or in the room when it is fixed. For two reasons. One I've already spoken about, but I want to give you some numbers. South Africa has 60 million people, 80,000 megawatts, and it's not enough. Okay? They have rolling blackouts. Okay. Which means that if we were to get to not enough in Nigeria, okay, we will have 240 roughly, divided by 60, which is 4, times 80, which is 320,000 megawatts, for us to get to not enough.
Not enough. So right now, it's not, what we have is not existent.
We haven't started.
Okay.
Okay. So when you look at the size, no, by the way, sorry, I need to we started. We're not far.
Yes.
It's just that it's the wrong, place. So Nigeria actually, NERC says, between NERC and TCN, they say we have about 25,000 megawatts of power. That's not true. We think we're about 45,000 to 50,000 megawatts. It's only 4 of it that is centrally generated.
Yes.
So, but when you look at how much power we have in Nigeria, we have about 50,000.
Yes.
Okay. And all of those 50,000 are looking to migrate away from their generators onto the grid. Okay. Each and every one of them. There's not one person in Nigeria today that owns a generator that is hoping that this time next year they're still running the generator, regardless of how much they've spent on it. Okay, so when you look at the size of that market, you will understand the potential. The second is the size of the capital that is ready to risk getting the answer right. We have not seen it. The billions of dollars that are waiting to back the people that find the answer and are able to run this. So it's something that we see every day. We see investors asking us, what do you think? What do you think? And the reason why they're asking is, even if nobody knows the answer, I know that's not the right answer, but we are close. Conversation that is constantly going on. We use a phrase that is slightly different from what I've heard today. We use the phrase investable versus bankable. And most people don't know that there's a slight difference between investable and bankable. And the issue is that something that's bankable may not be investable. What do we mean by that? If you don't have the right equity to unlock loans, very few environments will give you 100% of the capital you need just from banks. You need to be able to also attract investors, equity investors. Okay? So something may, if I have collateral, if I want to go to a bank today and I have my house, okay, for 100 million, and I go and borrow 100 million, that is bankable. But if I have, well, nearly, okay, in fact, they even say no, Seth, just to show you how bad things are.
I saw her just
She's like, no,
doing
enough.
this.
It's not enough.
The jury is out on that.
But work with me. But if what I needed was 150, for which my loan to value is just 100, and I can provide the capital, I still have an equity shortfall. And that equity shortfall is around understanding the risks, your structure of the risks, being able to attract and the return to equity, which is always higher than return to debt. Okay? So when you look at the investability of the situation in Nigeria, once we figure out how to get the pricing to the right level, and it's not far. Today we pay for Toyota. Nobody says, oh, where's your Toyota going? It's going to Nigeria. Okay, you people cannot afford more than $6,000. No. Toyota is Toyota. Tin tomato is tin tomato. What's the price? Once we get to that place, and it's not far, it is going to happen in the twinkle of an eye. It really is, which is why we have such a big team looking at this thing. Because the day this thing changes, it's going to change, just like it changed October, or when was it that the president said subsidy is gone? It took a little bit of time, but it's going to happen like that. One day, we'll just make the call. This thing is over. And if you're in the room, on that day, you will be one of the first movers, and your life will be transformed.
Absolutely. Can we appreciate Mr. Pade Dorotoye? I see where this is going. Some people who came into this room a bit skeptical about the sector. Let's go and see what they're saying. I know that your mindset is receiving a shift right now. We have the only lady in the panel. I'm going to ask her same way, from a motherly instinct point of view, to encourage us. Now, a lot of people are afraid of commercial banks when it comes to power projects. But today we have a renewed insight that you can play at different levels and you can etch at it at your own little space, whether you want to go into manufacturing of solar panels, renewable energy, or you want to partner, or you want to even go into metering. Right now we hear that within the metering spectrum, there's a lot of technology being deployed. Some meters can detect when there is a tampering. You can do remote monitoring. You can do fault monitoring. So technology, our tech guys are getting into this space. So, mommy, encourage us, ma.
There is hope.
I love that.
There is hope. But I think that most importantly is that...
Somebody said renewed hope. Is it renewed hope? There's hope. Okay.
There's hope. There's hope. There's renewable hope.
Renewable hope. We love that.
But I think most importantly, I need to let it be clear that the power sector, from our own research of its potential and what can do, is by far bigger than the telecom sector. By far. So that's where we are. We'll demonstrate to you that there's still a lot of opportunities, and we need to start to unlock it so that we truly can unlock the wealth that's sitting in Africa. There is nothing we can do without power. We need it. We need power to strengthen our productive base. We need power to improve the quality of life. We need power for almost everything that we do. And the reality is that there is the hope that that power will show up. And it will show up in this generation.
Thank you so much.
It's not going to be
after our time.
Something that will elude us. I think it has to show up in our own generation.
Thank you so much. We share your optimism and faith. And here in Future of Power Africa, we are engaging to the level of our school curriculum. to begin to re-educate at that level. You know, if you look at advancing countries, or they call them advanced countries now in Asia, at the primary, and they're already looking for alternative. They're just already solving for how to bring innovation into the power sector, from renewable energy to wind to all of that, being demonstrated in the classroom at kindergarten level. So we are trickling down the knowledge all the way to that point. I don't know whether I'll have a chance for any speech. It's not a day of long speeches. We're just here at Future Africa to assure you that if there's a credible platform you're looking for, where you gather information that will help you make the right business decision in the power space, we're here for your service. I'll hand back on to Oluwaseun P. and Abe to moderate the last few minutes of our interactive session, and we'll recess for this conference. Thank you very much for creating time. Thank you very much for your presence. Thank you, sir.
Can we celebrate our convener, Engineer Jude Wokochinie? Thank you. Clearly, you can see he has a passion for young people and new investors, new entrepreneurs who are trying to come into this space. And the line of questioning was to definitely get the experts and doyens to speak to them. And so we, again, just want to thank our online audience. We know that a lot of people can't be here physically, and our convener also spoke to them. So can we just welcome our online audience with a round of applause? We should have done that earlier as well. Thank you. And so the barcode is also being useful to our online audience. So they've sent in questions. So Abby and I will just go through the questions, or maybe I should leave Abby to do that, actually. And then the panelists would respond. Should we, in the interest of time, is it okay to maybe just go through the questions and whichever one they want to respond, so just go once? Or are you able to? Let's celebrate this panel. They are well able. They are ready. So we can address them one by one then.
I think that sounds great. The only issue is that some questions have come in. Many thanks for all your questions that have come in, by the way. Some of them are not directly addressed to anybody specifically, while some are. I'm just going to start with one of them. The first question is, what avenues could be considered to help dampen the shock of subsidy? I believe that should be softened. Who would like to take this, please? Yeah. What avenues could be considered to help soften the shocks of subsidy removal? Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so I am happy that Tony confessed that he's solely responsible for where we are today with the service level tariff structure we have. But I hope we know that it's a Nigerian solution to a Nigerian problem. It's not a common problem, and the way electricity tariffs are done in different parts of the world is a consumption level tariff, which means if you consume between 0 and 50 kilowatt hours per month, your tariff is this. But the day God blesses you and you can afford an AC, your tariff goes high. And the day you have an AC and microwave, your tariff goes higher. And when you have a welding machine, your tariff goes higher. And when you have a factory, your tariff goes higher. When you create, it's called a floating end inclined plane tariff structure. That's what applies generally around the world. No two people pay the same tariff, and everybody gets the same. Which means, if you have a house that has 10 ACs, but you go on vacation and you shut down all the ACs and all the lights, your tariff comes down. And if you have a house that has just one bulb and one fan, but your children send you money to buy 3 ACs, better tell them to send money for AC as well. And when you have a tariff structure that's like that, you don't need to think of helping the subsidy. Because the truth of it, although today our electricity market, we estimate, and of that 4,000, it is estimated, and Tony, you may have more valid data, but it is estimated by between 65 and 70% of that electricity goes to the residential sector. It's not supposed to be like that. It's not supposed to be that much. Manufacturing and commercial and supposed to take the bulk of it. So when we get to the right level, the people who are currently shaping and making all the noise on electricity prices will be, you can literally give it to them for free. But they are the ones that are stopping the investments for the people who are ready to pay and will pay. So if we have that kind of structure, you will not need to worry about subsidy. And then the final idea, which is also done in other places, which is, come, everybody, we have 4,000, we're going to share it equally. So there's 20 million consumers in Nigeria. We have X number of terawatt hours. Once you use your own, it's finished. You can wait until the next month. But if you want more, put on your light, and it will now cost you 400. But once you have used your 6 kilowatt hours in the month, if you don't want, so we leave for the 4,000 megawatts we have today, you leave it at 120, 130 naira. Okay, and you divide your bulk everybody equally. Use your own. Some people use their own for 1 month. Some people use their own in 10 seconds. Once you finish it, put off your light.
I think that's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Why hasn't anyone thought of doing that?
Quite mathematical.
Because they don't work for Savannah.
Very aptly put. Very aptly put. We have a next question, and this is for Dr. Tony. The question is, how have the Gencos been keeping the tabs running if they only get 30% of invoice from the uptaker?
We're running on credit and goodwill. It's as simple as that. We're running on credit. Okay, I don't know, because there's certain things I can say and I cannot say. No, I can. Well, you can tell me how much. But no, seriously, one of the major gas suppliers, Root Egmi, is the biggest power station in Nigeria. Yeah, and Sahara manages Egmi. They wrote to us last year and said for last year alone, we were owing them, by the end of the year, it was probably 100 billion naira for last year alone. And they were going to shut us down. Yeah? I said, okay, fine, do so. You think you've had systems collapses. If the biggest power station in Nigeria shuts down, you will have system collapses. And so we go to government. So, but to be fair to them, they've kept the gas available, just like Bade has done to some of our power plants in River States. We are running on credit, but at some point, it will not be possible to continue. So that is how we have survived. Credit and goodwill, and speaking with the manager as we go. That's the honest truth. But it's not sustainable. That is the reality.
Earlier, just listening to both of you and you know what Mr. Adrote said, clearly there's something that has to be done about how the idea of removing these subsidies is sold to the public, especially those at that in quote bottom rung. So clearly political will is needed, but communication, how it's communicated so that there can be a buy-in. Because if I just imagine if we had you, for instance, saying what you just said at a public forum, I think that sort of continued conversation can change the perspective of the public.
But if you listen to what Bade said, look, you can support the less privileged in society. If anybody needs a subsidy, sorry, it's not us. Yes? So there is a way you can provide some sort of subsidy or succor for and it is what he said, consumption. The less privileged don't consume as much power as you and I. So very quickly, for example, if you did some, number crunching, and you said the average guy uses 100 units of electricity a month, the average guy, and you as government says, okay, I'm going to subsidize that. But as he said, once he uses above 100, he pays a cost-reflective tariff. Now, those of us, most of us in this room, will use that 100 units in 2 days. So we know that we are going to pay a cost-reflective. If you like, put your industrial AC. That's your problem. But the average guy, if he manages his consumption, he will use that 100 units, and he'll be able to afford it. And there must be a meter. But we, the operators, I keep saying these things, a service level, we must make sure the power is available. What people get really annoyed about is the fact that they are paying for something they are not getting.
Right.
Yeah?
Right. Yes, please.
The most powerful way to sell the tariff issue, the tariff problem, or to communicate it is, it's not a cost. Okay? Now, I say it's the easiest, but you have to be speaking to certain people, is there is a direct correlation, very well understood, that says the more power electricity you have, the more wealth you have. Okay? And therefore, it appears like there's going to be a short period where your earnings lag your spend. But it's a very short period of time around the world. There's nothing about where we are in Nigeria that's going to make that rule different. Is when the power becomes available and you pay for it, the wealth follows it straight away. And the same reason why you see people, go and line up at embassies to Japa and, go and thank God when they get their visas, the same way people will be running back here because the earning capacity will be here. Yeah. So this way to sell it is it's what unlocks wealth.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to take this question. I think if the commissioner was still here, she might have been the best person to attend to it. But we'll just have your perspective. What will be the first step for liberating the energy markets in states like Oyo, with the highest number of customers and also the highest number of unmetered customers in Nigeria, considering collection rates show bankability of projects? The first step for liberating the energy markets at state level.
Can I behave like a typical Nigerian, answer the question by asking a question? And let me ask people here. I don't know how many people have meters in their homes, but those of you who don't have, will you be happy to pay for your own meter? Just so that you know that nobody can cheat you with that bill. Will you be happy to pay for your meter? As opposed to waiting for whether it's the disco or the government to give you meter free of charge. How many people would rather pay for their own meter? Sorry? You rather pay for your meter? Yes. So that is one way. Now, whether it is the members of the public or the government saying, because look, government must take some responsibility. And yes, the commissioner is not here. It is, yes, you do the policy and all that, but at some point, you have to put your hand in your pocket if it is your citizens. So if you decide that as government, I will make sure my people have meters, yes? That is, so they know that whatever they are getting is as they consume. Forget the theft and all that nonsense, yes? There will always be people who do dodgy things. But what they get, they're paying for it. That confidence is there, that comfort is there. That's one step, towards liberalizing the market.
Fantastic. Any other comments from panelists, or do we go to the next question?
No, I think pretty much everything has been said on that. Now, I will say this. The programs that are set up where meters are centralized and, given into all these meter programs, there's always a new meter program. I believe they're ill-advised. Yeah. What would be probably more effective would be to just let people buy meters the same way they buy phones, right? And the truth of the matter is that, this might be a bit controversial, but power is really for people who can pay for it, right? If you don't have, and you need power, I'm saying power in significant quantums, right? Power in significant quantums is either for you to utilize for your life, right? So if you're running ACs, well, you were able to afford an AC, so why can't you pay for the power for the AC, right? So if you're using power at even higher levels, then you're using it for productive use. So you're using it to make money. So why shouldn't you be able to pay for the power you consume? So if you have enough demand for power that requires you to have a three-phase meter, then you can afford to pay for the three-phase meter, right? So I think that, the honest conversation really about let's liberalize and allow folks to buy meters, and that's just a part of the cost of the service. What we'll find is that just as with phones, where you've seen now that there are cheaper phones, there's, the same thing will happen with the power sector, really.
All right, fantastic.
So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's very well put. So it's one thing to want to see a full liberalization, it's another to be ready for it. The next question is for Ma'am Iyabo as well as Mr. Tola Talabi. Just a second, please. So how can stakeholders effectively lobby the government to create an enabling environment for sustainable energy solutions in Africa, specifically through lowered taxation, reduced interest rates, and an encouragement for investment to ease entry into the sector? So, yes, please, you may go first.
I said earlier on that capital.
Please get another mic. Or you can.
I said earlier on that capital is available. Is available in the quantum that is required, and is available also at the right pricing. At the right pricing, because a lot of the folks outside of Africa are throwing money towards renewable energy, and it's not inappropriately priced. So I know that there's funding that is behind, that's available for supporting the power sector. I think the other bit of the question was on how, so that's about affordability. What else did the person say?
Interest rates?
So so the interest rates, it's at the right pricing, I think is available, especially in the renewable energy space.
There's scope for that to happen.
Yes.
All right, then. Let's get Mr. Tola Talabi on that. Thank you very much for that response to it.
So I think there's a lot that's actually going on already. In spite of the challenges of the sector, and we need to encourage these types of participants, we do have an institution such as InfraCredit, which provides credit guarantees for infrastructure projects, particularly power projects. And they've been incredibly supportive of companies such as ourselves and others that are investing in the power sector by providing credit guarantees, which then encourage banks such as Iyabo's Bank to lend for those projects, and also gives access to pension funds. And also, there are different ways you can look at affordability, right? So sometimes the challenge isn't so much the interest rate, but sometimes it's the tenor. So, if you're able to borrow for 15, 20 years because there are this credit enhancements, then, that allows you to pass on some of those savings in terms of affordability. So that is already happening. More of it needs to happen. And then, in terms of equity investment, we have private equity funds such as the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority that's coming out and supporting investments in the power sector. They invested in a 10 megawatt solar plant in Kano. They're currently investing in one of our power plants. And then we also have private equity funds such as ARM Harris, who've been incredibly supportive, invested equity in the sector, even when, in spite of all the challenges, right? And what's important is that, those investments are successful, and then there'll be an avalanche of more capital coming in. So I think that, it's important to highlight that these things are already happening, but a lot more of it can happen, right? Once there are more success stories.
All right, absolutely. That's very refreshing to hear. I'll just take another, or do you want to go? Right. I think the next one is more of both a comment and a request. I don't want to call it a demand. It says, based on the perspective on the inevitability of removing subsidy if we must progress, I would like one of the panelists to please speak about cultivating trust from the public for them to buy into the harsh impact of removing this subsidy, especially when it's done abruptly. The public has lost trust in the system completely.
Yeah, I think Mr. Dute spoke to that already in one of his responses as well. But if you want to add, I think
it has been addressed already, so we can move to the next one.
Yeah. To be honest, I think most of these questions have been addressed, but I will just throw this out and what do you think the government should do concerning those in the rural areas who will find it difficult to afford the actual amount that will be required if government takes a bold step to end electricity subsidy? So it has been answered, right? Underserved or unserved communities.
So, the thing about it is that a lot of these situations we've actually dealt with in Nigeria already, right? So, in the telecom sector, there is a fund called Universal Service Provision Fund. Yeah. And what that fund did was, yes, when the telecom sector was deregulated and, you had investment come in, MTNs of the world, and hundreds of billions of dollars came in, and phones where, telephony was available in most of the country. You still had those rural areas where there just wasn't, there just still wasn't, because it didn't make commercial sense for telecoms companies to come in. Well, there was this fund, right, which took a percentage of the revenues that telecoms participants earned, and that fund was then used to support investment in those rural areas, right, to ensure that there'd be telephony, there'd be internet service in those areas. So the same thing can be done for the power sector, where there is, and I think the Lagos state law allows for something like that, where there's a small percentage that goes into a service provision fund so that those rural areas can receive the infrastructure and support for power to be available. So it's something that's been done before. It can be done in the power sector also.
Fantastic. Yes.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I do want to say Mr. Udue is one of his companies just commissioned a mini grid in a relatively rural part of Lagos, and I'm sure it took some of their social responsibility to do that. So just to mention.
Again, that question, shows the disconnect we have between our fears and the reality. There are potentially still people who think that there are people in the villages who are dealing solely with no electricity because they have a need and no money. But that's not true. These guys are running generators. Okay? There are the ones who can't. I mean, we have poverty in Nigeria, and let's accept. So if you gave free electricity today to 100% of the people, some people will still have to buy bulb, and they don't have money for bulb. Then what are we going to do? Subsidize bulb? So we are not talking about those ones yet. We're talking about the people in the village. A few weeks ago, I was in Ekiti for a week. We had 4 hours of electricity.
The whole week?
The whole week. Well, it was actually 4 days, but it was 4 hours. Okay? What were they doing? They were not sitting there twiddling their thumbs playing Ayo. They were running generators at 800 to 900 naira per kilowatt hour. So when you are talking of people in the villages, we're not talking of people who are, abject poverty. We will deal with that problem later. There are other issues. We are talking of people today.
Already paying 800.
Who are paying? They are paying it today. So if we don't get our minds out of that, what are we going to do? So let's stay where we are because some people can't afford this, so all of us can't afford it. We will die. We can't afford to continue to think like that.
I think this is the reason why we're having this conference and this conversation. It's really to start to, instigate this mindset change and for to see it the way you said it. So, Abby, is that it?
Yes, it is. Thank you so very much. I know time flies, and I want to thank you, everyone on this panel, for being so amazing. This was a very robust, insightful discussion. So I want to thank you, Mrs. Iyabo Soji Okusanya, Mr. Pade Dorotoye, Mr. Tola Talabi, Dr. Tony Yoruai. Many thanks for being a part of this. And of course, Oluwaseun, how could I forget you? Of course, thank you so much for moderating this very important discussion. I would ask that you please remain on stage. Would like to have a photograph with the convener. And of course, we can't, wrap this up without thanking Engineer Jude Nwoko-Chinye for putting this really great initiative together. It's the inaugural one, of course, as we all know. And we're hoping, of course, Mr. Jude, to see a lot more of it, isn't it? Are you going to promise us a bit more of it? All right, then. So let's take a few photographs, and I'll do some quick housekeeping. We've come to the end of this. I want to thank our great participants for being a part of this, for your very cogent questions as well. At the end of this, we will, if anybody has received a tag, we would like to have a meeting with the convener over there, and then there'll be a little networking just outside. So if you receive a tag, we'll go outside for that and just have a few interactions and some networking outside. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today, for joining us at the first Future of Power Africa, and we hope that you all have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you so much.